You are listening to Supreme Magus by Legion 20, Chapter 40, 276 Tower Force, Part 2. Those are more than simple enchantments. Salark shifted the point of view away from the giant violet and close to the energy cocoon that surrounded the galaxy, allowing everyone to discern its true nature. That's not an energy field, Lith said. That's a power core. That's the tower core, to be precise, Menadian pointed out as soon as she recognized enough of her creation to be sure of her findings. Or rather, part of it. Most of those runes are new, and I've never seen them before. That's because as the tower healed Solus, Solus changed the tower, Salark explained. They are intertwined, and they have grown together for the past 18 years. The magic you created became part of your daughter, Rifa. It became part of a living being, gaining the seventh element, the element of life. That's why all the pieces of the master set have developed a spirit crystal, and despite the tower being 700 years old, its enchantments are brand new. You fused the tower core and Solus life force, creating a tower force. No one uttered a word for a while. They were too stunned by the revelation and dazzled by the way cold crystals and metal melded with the warmth of the elemental stars. That's beautiful, Anti-Solus, Turian said. When I grow up, I want to be as sparkly as you. Gods, no, Renan and Solus said in unison. I mean, let's talk about this again when you are older. Is there anything else we have missed, Grandma? Lith said, eager to change the topic. I'd say this is more than enough, Featherling, Salark replied. You should all take your time and rest. You have spent a lot of energy and have much to think about. I would love to do that, but there's no rest for the wicked. Falul used her breathing technique on herself to recover her strength. I need a place to train with Gungnir without putting myself or others in danger, and the firing range is not an option. Any suggestions? You can use the same spots Lith used for his own blade spell practice, Falul, Salark said. The desert is big, and you'll be my honored guest if you are in a rush. Otherwise, I suggest you wait until the tower is done with the repairs. I am in a rush, the Hydra replied. The longer before Lith can demonstrate that his promise for a blade weapon in exchange for help is not just hot air, the less the awakened community will consider the reward impressive. To achieve the maximum effect, we must display Gungnir's prowess while the news of the attack is still on everyone's lips. Helping Lith to keep his family safe is promptly rewarded with a masterpiece. That's the message we want to send. If this is everything, we'll take our leave. Dawn stood up, quickly followed by Akala. Thank you for your trust, Solus. I believe that today, Zepho and I have learned a lot about the depth our bond can reach and how rewarding it can be. The horseman gave Solus a bow so deep that her long raven-black hair touched the ground. Akala bowed just as deeply, but with his short hair, it left a much shallower impression. I'm glad that you've taken a step further towards recovery, Solus, and also humbled by your new forge-mastering technique. Baba Yaga pondered. I'll take a bit of time to rethink my own technique and maybe change my tower a bit. If anything happens, or if you need someone to talk to, however, just give me a call, and I'll run. I have no idea what Yaga and Dawn are talking about, but I'm glad you shared with me the changes in your life force, Solus, Lakra said. Once again, you've proven me wrong, but this time I'm just happy for you. Get plenty of rest and do not exert yourself. I hope that once the tower is done with the repairs, you'll invite me for a tour of the new floors. Until that moment, I'll stay out of your hair. Thanks, Dawn, thanks, Malishka. Solus shape-shifted into her human form and hugged them in turns. We couldn't have forge-mastered Gungnir without you. Thanks for your understanding, Aunt Loka. Baba Yaga, Dawn, and Silverwing warped away, quickly followed by Salark, Falul, and Firwal. The Elder Hydra had no blade weapon, but she was curious about Gungnir's prowess and hoped the glaive might work for her as well. Space. Solus shared the news of her transformation with the rest of their guests during lunch. She wanted Orion and Gianni to count on her help against the Jernoff, and Garrick and Ryla not to be surprised when she joined them for their exercises. This was a long day, Solus sighed. I want to eat a lot, sleep a lot, rinse and repeat until I'm tired of it. I hear you, I'm still at the Green Core, yet my last breakthrough was a nightmare. Gianni stared at her in disbelief. Yet I can't see any difference from this morning. The way you move, the ease with which you control your strength, everything is the same. Those words made Solus spit out her drink, realizing how careless she had been while in the presence of someone as observant as Gianni. That's because Auntie Solus always weighed a lot. Lilia snickered, and so did the other children. She's used to handling a massive body. You rude rascals. Solus blushed hard, only partly grateful for the deflection on her behalf. Also, isn't it a bit late? Orion asked. Tister and Lith had their bloodline awakening at the Blue Core. Why did Solus happen only now? My divine beast blood must have been more diluted than theirs. Solus had prepared the answer to such a question. Recovering the powers of such a distant ancestor is no exact science. It happens so rarely that there's barely any record of it. Can you show it to us? Garrick asked, his eyes sparkling with curiosity and enthusiasm. Sure, but I can only manifest my base form, Solus replied. I'm still beat from the breakthrough and my life force has yet to stabilize. She shapeshifted along with her clothes, taking care that her armor seamlessly overlapped with the crystals protruding from her skin. So cool, Garrick looked up and down her majestic figure. Are you a metal dragon or a crystal one? He pointed at her eyes and feathered wings. I have no clue about that, she replied, her voice sounding like the crackling of fire in a furnace. I'm not a Tiamat, that's for sure. She's also short, Aaron pointed out. I'm not short, I'm taller than you, Solus replied. No, you are not, Lyria tutted. During the demon dirge, Aaron and I were taller than that. You are still shorter than Uncle Lith and Auntie Ryla. Lith stood up, proving Lyria's point. You're a divine shorty auntie, Aaron chuckled, making Solus' eyes blaze with mana and her face mask with violet fire. Ungrateful brats, Solus reverted to her human form. No more toys for you. Please, Auntie, no, the children begged. How can your heart be so much smaller than your belly? They drummed on her abdomen, which had returned soft and plump. This does it, Solus blushed deeply and chased the kids as they bolted away, laughing. Chapter 40, 277 Venom Fang, Part 1. I can't believe Auntie Solus took the bait and walked into the joke, Lyria panted. Do you think she will catch us? Maybe, but it was worth it, Aaron replied. Space. The tower kept growing and expanding for hours. The process continued for the rest of the day and night, and by sunrise, the tower was still absorbing and processing the materials it extracted from the ground below. I did it. Falwell and Firwell returned to the mansion for breakfast, showing all the signs of someone who had pulled an all-nighter. Did you already master blade magic? Lith asked in disbelief, making Orion almost choke on his bacon. That was fast. I wish, Falwell replied. I'm not even close to completing the simplest blade spell I could come up with, but I've learned enough to give a proper demonstration of your weapon's quality, Lith. Shouldn't it be better to wait until you've practiced more? Solus asked. Quite the contrary. Firwell shook her head. A perfect demonstration would just show what Fanny can do and display the limits of her skill. An imperfect demonstration, instead, will allow the spectators to focus on Gungnir's potential. The awakened council, the royals, and the various divine beast bloodlines will be left in awe after witnessing what Fanny can do with so little training. Every ambitious mage will wonder if they could do even better than her, and how far Lith's blade weapon can go in the hands of a skilled user. She's right, Gianni nodded. In this kind of thing, less is more. You just have to give them a taste and let their imagination fill the blanks. Let your potential clients' hunger for power and curiosity work together toward the same goal. Blade weapons are unique. Even if Falwell could already tap into her glaive's full power, it doesn't mean that in the hands of someone else, Gungnir would be able to display the same prowess. It could be more, but it could also be less. A blade weapon is only half of the equation. The other half is the user. I'll see to it then, Lith nodded. Space. All members of the Awakened Council had the right to call for an assembly, but aside from the representative of the 5 races, no one bothered to do so. All the members of the Awakened Council also had the right to ignore such calls, which was always the outcome unless they had a good reason not to. When Lith sent out the invitations for an important meeting in Lustria County, only the hermits of the Awakened community didn't answer. The recent attack on Lucia gave the human and beast factions an opportunity to gain his favor that they couldn't miss. Lith's Tiamat and Indech bloodlines were highly sought after already, but the news of Aaron and Lyria awakening and learning light mastery brought the interest up a couple of notches. If such rumors were true, and as some said, the kids were even self-awakened, then Aaron and Lyria would soon become the gateway to access Lith's bloodline. The youths wouldn't look favorably on those who had abandoned them in their time of need, forcing the 2 factions to attend. The mention of blade weapons lured everyone else. Undead and plant folk had nothing to gain from marrying a Virhin, but they loved power more than anyone else. Moreover, they were curious to discover if another ruler of the flames might soon be born. It had been centuries since the last Awakened had received such a prestigious title. and no one could afford to gift the favor of a skilled artisan to their competition. The highest echelons of the kingdom and the representatives of the divine beast bloodlines accepted the invitation as well. They were eager to discover how much of the rumors surrounding Lith's ability as a forgemaster was true, and how much of their time and resources were worth investing in getting on good terms with the Verhins. So, when Lith arrived at the convened place for the meeting, the green of the grass was hidden not by the clouds covering the stars, but by the feet of a crowd of people belonging to all races that went as far as the eye could see. Beasts and plants had shrunk to the size of an average human, yet it wasn't enough. Many of them had brought artifacts that would help them to see and hear from a long distance, just to be safe. Lith had chosen the Jeghan Plains because of the lack of human settlements for kilometers, and because the land was flat for just as far with one exception. Blade Rock Mound was the only natural relief in the plains and worked as a perfect stage. It was just 3 meters, 10, high at its top. Close enough for Lith to look at the awakened in the front rows in the eyes, but also far enough to give everyone a clear line of sight of the demonstration that was about to unfold. "Since I know you have better things to do than listen to my ramblings, I'll be brief," Lith said, drawing a standing ovation from the liches in the crowd. "A few months ago, after a failed attempt to kidnap my mother, I offered you all a deal. You find and bring anyone who is bent on harming my family to me, I give you a blade weapon. No one took my offer. I don't know if it was because of a lack of interest or because you failed to uncover any ploy. Whatever the reason, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that a few days ago, my family was attacked again, and Falul the Hydra stepped forward to defend them. She took my offer and I delivered. Falul, if you please." Lith took a few steps back, making way for the Hydra. "I'm not big on speeches either," she said, receiving a warm welcome from the liches. "Long story short, this is Gungnir, my prize." She raised the glaive in the air, and the people surrounding Blade Rock Mound either narrowed their eyes to enhance their natural sight or donned all kinds of enchanted glasses in unison. The blade weapon design was simple but refined. It bore elemental crystals of all elements but spirit that were arranged in such a pattern that gave the impression of 6 slender snakes coiled around the haft. Even though Falul wasn't using any mana and had yet to start casting her spell, Gungnir reacted by releasing a powerful aura that seemed to challenge all those who stared into its crystals. "And this is going to be my blade spell, Venom Fang." Falul swung the glaive in the air in a sequence of complex movements that conjured strings of runes in their wake. Her spearsmanship was exceptional, but even those who had never seen a blade spell in their life could tell that her execution was clumsy and amateurish. The runes flickered right after manifesting, didn't mix well, and the spacing between them was a mess. It was akin to watching a young child trying to copy their parents' handwriting with a crayon instead of a pen. Yet the aura surrounding Gungnir grew exponentially stronger as the glaive kept cutting through the air. Chapter 4278 Venom Fang, Part 2. After a few seconds, even those with no hair that could bristle felt the mass of accumulated mana pressed against their skin, no matter how distant from Blade Rock Mound they were. When Falul couldn't contain Venom Fang anymore, she shot the Protoblade spell above her head. It produced a pillar of energy that pierced through the clouds and cleared the night sky. The light of the moon, the stars, and that released by Venom Fang lit Blade Rock Mound as if it were under a giant spotlight compared to the darkness of the rest of the Jeghan Plains. For a brief moment, the sun seemed to have appeared in the night sky. Its brilliance drove away the shadows and forced the people in the crowd to shield their eyes with their upper limbs. Then, as the blade spell got further and further away, it became a second moon, and then a small star that twinkled among the constellations for a few moments before disappearing in the blackness of space forever. The undead called it a reverse nova, but anyone who had not lived long enough to see such a phenomenon to occur naturally called it a miracle. "I'm sorry for the poor execution and delivery, but I got Gungnir just yesterday," Falul said, making the awakened either gasp or look at the priceless weapons they carried with them as if they were rotten garbage. "That's all from me, Lith." She stepped back, leaving the center stage to her former apprentice again. "That's the kind of blade weapon I make," Lith said. "I take no orders from anyone. If you want your own blade weapon, fetch me those who are plotting against my family. In case someone gets funny ideas, know that I always have my grandmother's help when I interrogate my prisoners. You can't just frame someone and get away with a free blade weapon." The liches booed him at the top of their magically amplified voices, since their lungs were as dried up as the rest of their bodies. It was actually a lie. Salark refused to help Lith in his investigations and only allowed him access to her pits of agony. Yet her mind-reading abilities were well known, and by mentioning them, Lith weeded out the potential false accusations. Hence, your prize will only be delivered after the confession if it proves that the prisoner was indeed conspiring against my family or me. Before accepting a prisoner, I'll require you to share the circumstances that led you to suspect them with a mind link. If it turns out you've brought me an innocent, you'll be blacklisted and lose the right to receive one of my blade weapons forever. Also, since I know many of you like to quibble, I'm interested only in those who can have the power and means to succeed. If a petty merchant is jealous of my father and tries to harm his business, their capture won't earn you a blade weapon. The same applies if you catch some idiot trying to ruin my mother's garden. Those are low-level threats I can deal with myself. So, don't waste my and your time by bringing in the first fool you find badmouthing the Verhins. More grumbles ensued as the liches realized that getting themselves a blade weapon would take actual effort. Somehow, the Tiamat seemed to have inherited Salark's mind-reading abilities and had foiled their brilliant plans. That's it, I have nothing more to say. Have a good hunt. Lith turned around and warped back to his home, leaving the divine beasts, the nobles, and the members of the council to discuss what they had just seen and heard. Inzialot, the Lich King, was stuck between a rock and a hard place. He wanted nothing more than to go back to his lab and resume his research, yet he would forever regret wasting an opportunity like this. Even if Inzialot would forget all about Lith's offer in a matter of hours, Nero would not. Whenever he whined about lacking a blade weapon or suffered a defeat, his feline companion would never let him hear the end of it. Very well played, Nero. The Lich's eyes narrowed in fury, and his voice expressed all the anger he felt from losing the imaginary arguments with his pet. Let's go for a walk. The Emperor Beast's jaw and those of all the spiders who inhabited Inzialot's bones fell to the floor. None of them was old enough to remember the last time when the Lich King had used his legs to move around instead of just blinking. Inzialot started by interrogating those attending the event about their relationship with the Verhins. It went on until Nero kindly pointed out that those who had come to the Jeghan Plains with his same purpose were unlikely to have bad intentions. That's a good point, the Lich King sighed. I have no clue what I'm doing. Nero, you take the lead. The small black cat conjured a tendril of spirit magic and formed a mind link with Inzialot, refreshing his memory about the most recent events in Lucia. The Lich disappeared, his decisiveness rushing the rest of the crowd to make up their mind before they fell behind their undead competitor. Every person with a shred of social life had overheard a few drunken people envious of Lith discussing what they wished happened to him and what they would do to his family, given the chance. Back then, the attendees had dismissed such words as bar talk fueled by alcohol after a bad day. Now, however, the awakened couldn't help but wonder how many among their neighbors had listened to those same conversations and already knew the identity of the suspects. More and more warp steps opened as the crowd surrounding the Blade Rock mound dispersed. In less than a minute, the only sounds disturbing the night's peace were the pops and crackles from the air displacement. Identifying those dangerous criminals wasn't enough. All those who wanted to get their hands on a blade weapon also had to find their quarry before someone else did. Space. That went well. Lith observed the reaction of his guests through the surveillance mirror of the tower. They seemed very interested, and they left in a rush. I would be surprised otherwise, Fearwell replied. Fanny here left quite an impression on her audience. By the way, was it true what you said about not accepting orders, not even from friends? I'm sorry, yes, Solus nodded. The more blade weapons we produce, the less value they have. Besides, why bother chasing shadows if you can just pay to get a blade weapon? Powerful creatures need a powerful motivator to move their old, lazy asses. Sad but true, Fearwell sighed. Why are you sighing? Menadian said, her tone expressing her full resentment for the Elder Hydra's attitude. You already have a blade weapon. My Dreamweaver staff is still a masterpiece. Emphasis on still, Fearwell replied. It's almost 1,000 years old, Rifa, just like Tessa's Morning Dew. We had no creation magic to dismantle our weapons nor access to anyone who could reforge them with modern magic. Otherwise, we wouldn't have struggled so much against Thrude and her minions during the War of the Griffins. You have a point, the first ruler of the Flames said, tormenting her chin. Chapter 40-279, The Path Ahead, Part 1. Can't you consider tuning up Dreamweaver as a maintenance job for an old client? Fearwell asked. Maybe you could do it without Lith's help, Rifa. You still have access to your tower and your skills have improved. Yeah, too bad that I lack a proper mana core and the assistance to do the job, Menadian replied. I would still need Lith's assistance and people. Don't worry, I get it. The Elder Hydra raised her hands. You have to excuse me then. I'd better play my part and join the hunt. Fearwell warped away, leaving Lith and his friends behind. Space. The news about Falul's blade weapon and Lith's conditions for forgemastering others spread like wildfire. All those who were actively plotting against the Verhins left Garland in such a rush that they didn't have the time to collect all their possession. Awakened, Emperor beasts, and several undead only took their most precious treasures with them before they warped for their lives. To make matters worse, they couldn't travel with any gate network without leaving a trail. They wore their best cloaking items, changed their features with body sculpting, and prayed to the gods not to meet anyone who could recognize them from their energy signature. I never made open threats to Verhin, but I publicly asked more than once who shared my grudge against him and was willing to teach that privileged runt a lesson. The runaways thought as one, as if their common fear established a mystical connection between them. I only revealed my plans to like-minded individuals in the safety of my home, but awakened and divine beasts don't need hard proof. Those will emerge by themselves once Verhin throws me in Salark's pits of agony. Those who had just cursed Lith's name and listened to such conversations instead decided to move out of their region and lie low for a long while. They had never done or said anything too compromising, but they knew who did. They trusted the hunter's greed and Lith's paranoia to throw them inside the pits first and ask questions later, and they were right. Over the next few months, no prisoner was brought to the Verhin mansion, but many plots against Lith's family were foiled nonetheless. Artisans tasked to forgemaster specific kidnapping and dimensional sealing tools sold their clients' names for small fortunes. Any group of awakened who had nothing in common yet, had been spotted together multiple times, was reported to the highest bidder as well. Awakened often lowered their guard in the presence of someone too weak to be a threat, and now those weak people found themselves in possession of priceless information that they sold through black market channels. Nobody moved a finger against the Verhins because the hunters had become prey. The only silver lining in that situation was that all the time and effort the Awakened had invested in securing the escape routes meant to move the Verhins out of the country saved their lives. Space. That was quite a show, little brother. Lith found Zorath and Baitra waiting for him at the mansion. You have become a skilled forgemaster. Thanks, Zor. It's always nice to see you. Lith gave her a short embrace and shook Baitra's hand. I wasn't surprised you missed the meeting at the Jeghan Plains. I know the organization has no shortage of blade weapons thanks to Baitra. Indeed, she nodded. I came here for more than the usual visit and congratulate you on your latest success. Can you please establish a mind link between us? Zorath extended her hand, and he did as bidden. She shared with him the details of her mission in Verendi to search for the fungus folk and how she had crossed paths with Solus, ignoring her trail on purpose. Lith also witnessed Zorath's fight against Orpal's uppers and memorized the smell of the unknown Jormungandr. You knew I was there? Solus' eyes went wide in surprise. Yeah, I stalled Theseus for as long as I could, and luckily it worked. The shadow dragon nodded. By the time we followed the scent of the plant folk to a river, there was no trace of them and their trail was cold. I didn't report this sooner to give both of us plausible deniability, and because I hoped that the organization would find and kill Acton and the Jormungandr. Sadly, we failed. Don't worry, Lith patted her shoulder. I appreciate the thought and the heads up. Based on how that Jormungandr behaved, he doesn't want to be associated with Meln and has a lot to lose if his identity is exposed. Maybe I'll meet him in the future, and he might lead us to Meln. Yeah, but that's not what I'm worried about now. How is your family doing? Zorath asked. I've got the gist of the situation, but I don't know the details. Is everyone all right? Another mind link brought the shadow dragon and the Reiju up to speed. Damn bastards, Zorath snarled. Attacking children like that? I want you to know that the organization has been looking into this since day one. Whatever we discover, we'll let you know. Whoever we find will deliver them to your doorstep. No reward required. That's very generous of you and the Master, Zor, Solus said. Not really, she shrugged. If no one earns your blade weapons, you and the organization keep their duopoly on them, 2 birds with 1 stone. Congratulations on your breakthrough, Solus. Baitra gave her a deep bow, keeping her distance. I'm so glad you have recovered most of what I took away from you. It wasn't you, Bitra, but thanks, Solus replied. To be honest, I gained more than I lost. She quickly shapeshifted into her divine beast form before reverting into a human. This makes no sense, Bitra blurted out. You never had a single drop of divine beast blood. Is this related to your bond with the tower and Lith? Nailed it in one, I. Welcome to the family, little sister. Zorath lifted Solus in a hug, cutting her short. I can't wait to see what you can do. Can we have a tour of the tower? I'm curious to see how much it has changed since our last visit. Both those things will have to wait, Zor, Solus replied. The tower has yet to stabilize, and with it my new form. I'll let you know as soon as new and old floors are done expanding. Thanks, Zorath nodded. Now please bring me to my cuties. You have no idea how much I have missed Ely, Val, and Ral. Space. Zorath and Bitra were overjoyed by how much the babies had grown, and how happy they were to see their aunties, yet everything else appalled them. The adult Verhins were struggling with the choice of awakening, while the kids had yet to recover from their brush with death. Lennart was pale and barely spoke, a shadow of his energetic and lively past self. By the time the two women returned home, they were seething with anger. I swear to the gods, I'd join the hunt myself if we hadn't much more pressing matters to attend. Bitra snarled in fury. I'll ask Father to send all the operatives he can spare to investigate the rumors. Chapter 4280 The Path Ahead, Part 2. Ever since Falul gave the demonstration, the black market is flooding with people selling information about potential threats to Lith's family. And when you say pressing matters, you don't mean forgemastering, right? Zorath asked. You're weird, Zor. Bitra stopped her furious pacing and turned around to look her wife in the eyes. I expected you to be angrier about what happened to the kids and more excited about our progress. Believe me, Bite, I am angry, Zorath flared with bright violet origin flames. I'm being quiet only because trashing our home to vent would be stupid, yet you are right about the excitement. I have a bad feeling about this. You and your big heart. Bitra pinched Zorath's cheeks and gave her a sweet kiss. You worry too much. You know what kind of genius Tezca is. He never makes mistakes. There is no way something can go wrong. That's what I'm worried about, Bite, the shadow dragon thought as she smiled and nodded. If Tezca is right, we'll take the first of many steps towards our goal. When we reach it, the balance with the Council and the other forces on Garland will shatter. The peaceful life and everything we got used to might get overturned before we know it. You are excited because you focus on the new beginning, whereas I can't stop thinking about how ugly things might end before we reach that point. They crossed the several corridors, warp steps, and security checks that separated them from Vaster's hidden lab deep underground his mansion in Verlam. Even while standing in front of the double adamant door studded with dozens of white crystals, they couldn't feel a mote of mana in the air. The cloaking system of the lab was a masterpiece that the Master and the Sun Eater had built together, depleting much of their considerable resources in the process. Past the door stood a large gene tank whose walls were made of pure white mana crystals and capped at both ends with adamant lids. If Solus were there, she would recognize in the magical contraption before her something that closely resembled the infirmary. Bitra had been one of Menadian's favorite apprentices and had visited the floor more than once while under the first ruler of the Flame's tutelage. Bitra had helped Menadian improve on the floor's enchantments, so she was familiar with it. The fourth ruler of the Flames had started working on the gene tank long before Solus gave her a tour of the reborn tower, and had updated Menadian's design with the help of the other Eldritches. The two rooms now shared very little, but the resemblance was still undeniable. I hope that everything went well. Vaster greeted them with a nod of his head, without ever stopping to fix cables and check dials. I wish I could visit Lith more often, but with all those damned guardians around the mansion, I have to wait until he can get away from the babies. Thank the gods nobody got hurt in the kidnapping attempt, and the demonstration of Lith's blade weapon was a success, Bitra replied. Yet his family hasn't recovered from the bad experience. They are still a bundle of nerves. I can imagine, one of the 10 Tezcas moving across the room said. Philia and Frey needed months to get over Meln's attack. The next time you see Lith, please tell him that I'll join the hunt as soon as I can. I owe him that much. It's only thanks to him and Baba Yaga saving Zorath's life that we figured out the necessary steps to merge our hybrid life forces. If you ever speak with Yaga again, let her know I owe her one, Nandi. I will, the Minotaur Orc snorted. You should be more respectful when you talk about her, Tezca. She's not your friend. Several cables connected him to the gene tank, and just as many connected him to the ground below. The lab was built above a powerful mana geyser that hosted several crystal veins, and Nandi's orc powers allowed him to replace the hands of Menadian. The biogems in his skin allowed him to channel the immense energy of the geyser and deliver it to the gene tank without wasting one iota of power. It was thanks to Nandi that the eldritches and abominations at the Master's service didn't need to feed on the living anymore. The energy he injected into them was greater than what the eldritches would have absorbed from slaying a divine beast. "She's my junior, though," another of the clones of the Sun-Eater smirked. "I have the right to pull seniority on someone so much younger than me." Lith was right back in Verendi. Vaster dismissed the quarrel with a wave of his hand. "Your life forces can't fuse as they are. They need to be rearranged in a stable, new configuration capable of withstanding your immense power. Those like Zorith are the lucky ones. They already possess the life force of a divine beast and only need to integrate their monster life force with it. Everyone else is in a much trickier situation. First, we need to discover what the life force of your respective species would look like if you ascended into divine beasts. Then, we have to bring you to that level, and only at that point can we follow in Baba Yaga's footsteps. If it's so easy, then why has no one aside from Zorith made any progress?" Orome, the skinwalker Eldritch, sneered. "If you have found the solution to our problem, then why is Tezca the only one among us who claims to have figured out his divine beast life force?" "Because you are fools, Orome," Tezca replied. "All of you. Runts like Kigan or Zorith are young fools still wet behind their ears, so it's no surprise they can't do anything without someone holding their hand. You Abthot and the others, instead, are old fools. You haven't lived as long as I did, but more than enough to go crazy and then sane multiple times. Just like me. Yet while I spent eternity mastering every trade and art to better understand my limits and how to overcome them, you've only focused on your powers." "Maybe," the Breaker growled. "Or maybe it's just because you have 10 heads and everyone else only has 1. Even if you had 100 heads, you would still be a fool, Orome," Tezca replied with a snort. "While I was great in life and became greater in death, you were a mediocre awakened human. You became great only in death, and only because of your unique eldritch skill, did you not?" Orome had no retort, so he raised his hands in surrender. His life as a man was no different from 1,000 others. He had achieved nothing and died in anonymity. If not for the Breaker eldritch ability, Orome would have never lived that long or become that famous. "Okay, I'm a fool," he sighed. "But are you sure about this? The organization can't afford to lose you. Hell, I can't afford to lose you." "Your care for your own interests is touching." The 10 Tezcas chuckled as one. "I'm sure, don't worry about it." Chapter 4281 Monster Half, Part 1. "I wish I shared your confidence," the Master replied. "You had a brilliant idea, Tezca, but I think you are biting more than you can chew. Tell him, Theseus." "For the 100th time, I'm not a healer," the Bastet Menios replied. "Pakwut was a butcher, a cruel monster that twisted the life forces of his victims for a laugh. I just inherited his knowledge." "Still, Pakwut experimented on life forces as very few others in Maugur's history did," Tezca pointed out. "Keeping alive his victims required finesse. He learned how much all kinds of life forces can take without breaking, which makes you our second-best expert after the Master." "And I agree with him," Theseus said. "You are taking this too far, Tezca, and on a path only you seem to see it that." "Because it's my Filgja life force," Tezca replied. "I studied it for countless hours while I tried to achieve the white core and prolong my life for as long as I could. Back then, I didn't even know what I lacked and what I could improve, but now I do. I have studied the life force of the divine beasts in the organization, and even the life force of a guardian." The mention of the experiments the hybrids had performed on his mother, while they held Ilza captive, made Theseus bristle. "What once made no sense is now so obvious that I can't believe it took me so long to figure it out. Yet I'm not ashamed to admit that it wouldn't have been still enough without Xenogrash. You gave me the final piece of the puzzle." The Shadow Dragon had been true to her word, and had never revealed anything about the tower or the means that Baba Yaga had employed to save her life. She had only allowed the Master and the members of the organization to study the changes in her life force. According to Tezca, that was enough for him to figure out a cure for himself and maybe for the rest of the hybrids as well. "I hope you are right," Zorith lied through her teeth. She was more afraid of what Tezca's success might bring than of the potential deadly consequences of his failure. "We are already unmatched as we are. Why isn't it enough?" she inwardly asked. "You all know your roles." The clones fused into the real Tezca as they advanced towards the madness. Zogger, Theseus, I don't care what you think. As long as I don't ask you to intervene or I lose consciousness, do not interfere with my work. We can only do things my way and know why I succeed or fail, or make a collective mess and clutch at straws afterwards. I want you here because if I'm wrong, you are the only ones who can restore my life force, even if it falls apart. I need your trust, is that clear? Crystal, the master nodded. I still disagree with this, but I'll do as you say. The Bastet crossed his arms. Bitra, I need full control of the madness. Give me your absolution, please. The original, not a copy. Tezca extended his hand, and the fourth ruler of the flames gave her hammer to him without hesitation. I will speak to you during the procedure. The Sun Eater looked around the room, meeting the eyes of his fellow hybrids. I'll explain my theory as I put it into practice, and I'll prove to you that I'm right. Zogger, if you please. The master established a telepathic connection between the hybrids and activated a diagnostic array that displayed the current status of his life force. A long time ago, when Tezca was still a Filgja, he wasn't much different from a regular emperor beast. His old life force resembled a solar system with a giant violet at its center and 6 smaller elemental stars orbiting it. After becoming an abomination, the darkness star had turned into a black hole, swallowing everything else. When he fell into an eldritch, the black hole had grown in size, and Tezca had recovered the remaining 5 elemental stars. Yet they were all smaller than the chaos black hole, especially the light star, and without life, there couldn't be spirit magic either. The master's experiments had brought the Sun Eater back to life, giving him the body and mana core of a warg. It had marked the reappearance of the 7th star, and every progress Vaster made in merging the eldritch and warg life forces had allowed the other elemental stars to grow in size. Now Tezca's life force resembled a supermassive black hole around which spun 4 giant elemental stars, 1 silver star, 1 emerald dwarf star, and what looked like a comet that moved back and forth across the quasar. This is the problem, Tezca pointed at the comet. My warg life force, using Lith's evolutionary classification, it's a mere rank 1, a magical beast that became stronger after its fall, but it's still far below a rank 2 emperor beast. His finger moved to encompass the 6 stars, leaving the black hole aside. Our eldritch life force instead is a rank 3. Don't get me wrong. I'm aware we are all superior to divine beasts, and that even the weakest among us can go toe-to-toe with a white core and live to tell the tale, but this is no measurement contest. I'm explaining what Baba Yaga did to Xenogrash and how it works to you. The coexistence of our different life forces allows the weaker ones to be elevated over time by the strongest. As you can see from the size and power the elemental stars have reached after the Master's experiments, my eldritch side has enhanced my Filgja side. At the same time, the eldritch and Filgja sides try to elevate my warg side, but they fail. He pointed at the pathetically small comet that dwarfed even in comparison with the emerald star. They fail not because they lack power, but because the warg life force is defective from birth. Its natural growth path has been severed at the moment of its fall. No matter how long we wait, our monster half will never match our other life forces. Without that crucial step, our 3 aspects will never be able to meet as equals and merge into something new. Even if one of us were to strong-arm their life forces to fuse into one, the monster side would be destroyed in the process. Useless to say, that moronic hybrid would either die for good or go back to being an abomination. If what you say is true, then what are we doing here? Ubthot asked. Also, how does this explain Xenogrash's sudden evolution? You didn't pay attention, Tezca snorted. I said that the natural growth path of our monster life force is severed, not all paths. There is still a way, and I will show it to you if you shut up. Ubthot raised her hands in apology and mimicked the gesture of sealing her lips. Here's my plan. I'm going to enter the madness and use Nandi's world energy and Theseus and Zorith's vitality to permanently alter my life force. I'll focus solely on the warg aspect and remove the blocks that prevent it from reaching rank 2. Chapter 4282 Monster Half, Part 2. I have no idea if it will happen right now or if it will take some more time, but if I'm right, the moment the obstructions are gone, my entire life force will become stronger. Until this moment, the warg aspect weighed me down and halted my evolution. My eldritch and Filgja side can't develop further without crushing the warg under their might, so fixing the warg side will be enough to improve my life force as a whole. The Sun Eater donned the skull and the maw of Bitra as he entered the madness and sealed its adamant lid. Now watch. He pushed the button that filled the gene tank with nutrient liquid and switched to the mind link. As soon as no air was left, and he received a steady flow of world energy and vitality from his allies, Tezca began his work. As you can see, time and experiments have brought my warg aspect above the mere flame of a rank 1, but it's nowhere close to the size and power of the star of a rank 2. Moreover, the color and density of the warg's flame change constantly due to its fallen state. So far, the best it could do was to use the energy scattered by the elemental stars to keep its shape and orbit stable, but that's it. This is where I'm going to start the procedure. The Sun Eater used his Tier 5 body sculpting spell, Starsight, to observe his own life force while another spell, Life Well, to alter it. A strand of powerful mana enveloped the comet, forming several protective layers around it. Life Well seemed to double the comet's size, but it was just the spell reaching and surpassing the might of the warg aspect. When that happened, Tezca pulled at Life Well and forced the comet to alter its course. The Sun Eater brought the warg aspect near the Emerald Dwarf first, placing the comet in a stable orbit. The layer of Life Well opened on the dark side of the comet, so that the raw spirit magic coming from the front was blocked by the spell. It allowed Tezca to control the flow of the spirit element that entered the warg aspect and monitor the changes it underwent. As soon as the comet showed signs of instability, Tezca pulled it out of orbit and moved it to the light star. Here, he repeated the procedure, opening an even smaller fissure in Life Well since the light element released by the light star was several orders of magnitude greater. The comet stabilized, yet soon became unstable again. At that point, Tezca moved it into orbit around the next star, the fire elemental star. You see, our monster life force is compatible with our original life forces, or we would have never come back to life, Tezca explained as he moved the comet to the water star. Yet it's also fallen and weak. Our other aspects are so much stronger that direct contact would end in the annihilation of our monster side. Yet the innate instability from its fallen state prevents it from growing without external intervention. It's the reason our life forces repel each other instead of growing closer over time. He's right, Bytra's eyes widened in understanding. Our original, eldritch, and monster aspects want to survive, so they limit the interactions between them to remain stable. Yet if they don't interact, they can't adapt to each other. It's a paradox. Correct, but only if you leave their condition as it is. The Sun Eater inwardly nodded. What I'm doing is to expose my warg aspect to controlled amounts of energy from my Filgja aspect to stimulate its development. The comet had grown in size with each new temporary orbit, but Tezca just added more mana to Life Well to keep the warg aspect's movements under his surgical control. Yet that's not enough, he said, grunting in pain and effort. Without darkness, it's only a matter of time before the unbridled vitality of a monster will turn against itself. Our eldritch aspect is so strong that it keeps the monster aspect's rampant life force stable, even from a great distance. Yet close interaction is necessary if I want the warg side to become capable of harnessing the power of chaos. Tezca kept the orbit of the comet around the black hole wide and created an opening the size of a pinhole in Life Well. The chaos felt the exposed prey and pounced on it mercilessly. The contact provided the comet with the darkness element it needed and restrained the ever-changing warg life force, yet it also allowed the chaos to spread. The Sun Eater raised wall after wall with his spell, buying the warg aspect precious moments of respite. During that time, the comet fought back the invasion of chaos until it was purged. Yet when that happened, Tezca let the barriers collapse so that more chaos could seep in. The constant battle consumed the vitality of the warg aspect, but it also improved its strength. Each time the comet cleansed itself from the chaos, it developed a bit more resistance to the cursed element, and could withstand a greater amount of it before Tezca had to seal the comet again. After a few cycles of that, the warg aspect's light dimmed. The Sun Eater groaned in strain as he pulled the comet away from the black hole and back into the orbit of the Emerald Dwarf. This time, the warg aspect absorbed the spirit element, and then the other 5 elements as a dry sponge absorbs water. It recovered all the vitality it had lost and gained some more. The comet's fire was now more brilliant and stable. It still mutated from time to time, but the process had become slower and less dramatic. "Do you see now?" Tezca said, giving the warg aspect a bit of time to rest and recover before moving it to the black hole again. "Growth is possible, adaptation is possible, yet you can't just sit there and hope for the best. You have to do it yourself." The interaction with the chaos lasted longer and was much more painful than the previous, but the Sun Eater soldiered on without making a sound. He repeated the process until the warg aspect had reached half the size of the emerald dwarf, and he felt such a strain on his life force that he knew that progressing any further would have meant death. Behold, the second last step of Tezca's procedure was to find a new stable orbit for the comet as it moved across the quasar. He kept changing and adjusting the comet's trajectory until he found an orbit that passed close enough to the 7 elemental stars to allow the warg aspect to exchange energy with them, but far away enough to limit the contact and keep it brief. After 2 full cycles of the warg, eldritch, and filgja aspects freely interacting, Tezca's life force started to pulse with new strength. The emerald dwarf grew in size, and so did all others, allowing the Sun Eater's spirit tail to grow several centimeters as it received a constant yet weak flow of power. The eldritch hybrids gave Tezca a loud round of applause, many of them exchanging hugs and handshakes despite the millennia of rivalry. Chapter 4283, Other Half, Part 1. You were right, Theseus said. I can see your life force flowing throughout your body and reaching your mana core without the chaos devouring it anymore. The procedure is a success. Yet something doesn't add up, Orome said. Tezca's idea was exactly what you would expect from him, something well thought out, carefully planned, and brilliantly executed. Then why did you and the Master oppose it? Because this was just the first half of my plan, Tezca said, cutting Vaster short. Theseus and the Master agree with me until this point and disagree with the rest. Because it's reckless and dangerous, Vaster snarled. Yet I have to move forward. The Sun Eater kept absorbing nutrients, world energy, and vitality until he regained his full might. Look carefully, Zogger. If I let things as they are, the warg aspect will probably evolve into a Hattie, but what then? A Hattie is still a fallen race, and it's bound to meet another dead end. Besides, isn't our goal to regain everything we have lost by becoming abominations, to have an offspring? Then, please explain this to me. How can we achieve any of that if our eldritch side remains the fulcrum of our existence? Tezca pointed at the hologram of his life force, where the black hole stood still at the center of all, stronger and bigger than all the other stars put together. Death is part of life, but nothing can be born from it. You need life to bring forth new life. This cannot stand. What I've just achieved is no resurrection, just a more favorable state of undeath that would bring us nowhere near our goal. I can see the real answer, Zogger. I can see how things are supposed to be, and I won't be stopped. Tezca's telepathic echo roared in the minds of his fellow hybrids as he started the second and final step of his procedure. Much to everyone's surprise, this time Lifewell didn't affect the warg comet. The spell wrapped itself around the emerald dwarf, forming a barrier that held the full power of Tezca's mighty cores and his indomitable will. He's insane. Zorath's eyes widened when she realized what the Sun Eater was about to do. We told him it's suicide, but he won't listen, Vaster snarled. Stop bothering me and prepare for the worst, Tezca said, waiting to return to his peak strength again before making his next move. Nandi Xenagrosh, I need you to cast your doubts aside and focus on your task. Falter for one moment and I will fail. Zogger, Theseus, if that happens or I'm wrong, you must be ready to step in and save me. Everyone else shut the fuck up. My life is at stake, so I'm the only one allowed to talk. Before anyone else could so much as formulate an answer, the Sun Eater ripped the emerald dwarf out of its orbit, throwing it at the light elemental star nearby, and the entire structure of his life force into disarray. The spirit star pierced through the silvery star, coming out from its opposite side after a few seconds, and then crashing into the giant red star. The interaction between the emerald dwarf and the others was as brief as the warg comets but much more violent, and the energy exchange was also greater. Tezca had the spirit star reside inside each of its temporary hosts just long enough to paint them green before moving on to the next. Everyone's mouths gaped in horror as the spirit star pierced through the giant orange and dived fearlessly into the black hole. The chaos energy swallowed the emerald dwarf and dragged it into its very core. The black hole relentlessly attacked the concentric layers of life well from every side, tearing it to shreds like a kid eager to get rid of the plastic wrap and reach the candy underneath. Tezca released wave after wave of mana from both his black and warg cores, focusing every iota of his considerable strength and magical mastery to deliver the mana to the spirit star without it being devoured by the black hole. The eldritch hybrids expected the emerald dwarf to bolt away after a brief stay, just like it had done with the other elemental stars. The Sun Eater had other plans and left the emerald dwarf inside the maelstrom of chaos for long minutes that seemed to last hours. His silver fur fell in big tufts, which were quickly replaced by a roiling mass of black energy as his muscular body withered as if he had been starving for weeks. Tezca endured the failure of his organs and the shattering of his bones in silence, relying on the steady supply of vitality and world energy that he received from his allies to keep staring death in the eyes without allowing it to touch him. Then every fiber he had left tensed up like a bowstring, and he pulled the spirit star free of the black hole with a final burst of mana and will. Some of the Eldritches had hoped to see the chaos turn emerald, or at least to shrink in size, yet none of that happened. The black hole seemed unchanged, whereas the emerald dwarf was diminished and the life well spell all but spent. Despite all that, Tezca's snout curled up in a triumphant smile. There was one change, one so small that it went unnoticed by all those who didn't wear a skull of Bitra. A thread of spirit magic as thin as a hair's breadth emerged from the black hole and connected it to the emerald dwarf. The other elemental stars soon developed their own emerald thread that connected them with the spirit star and each other. Tezca moved the emerald dwarf on the opposite side of the quasar, and had it trap the Warg comet in its orbit as the spirit star moved towards its destination. "This is how things are supposed to be," Tezca telepathically roared as the chaos energy that plagued her body turned back into matter, and the matter became flesh and fur. Not a life force dominated by chaos, but a twin system where the life force stands as chaos's equal. You have spent so long as Eldritches that you have forgotten that mana is nothing but the power of all the elements mixed with a spark of life force. The emerald dwarf was all the life force I needed since the beginning. What it lacked to grow and develop was the power of the other elements that was slave to the whims of the chaos that comprises my black core. Chaos is nothing but darkness, and even darkness must submit to the life force to generate mana. Right now, my spirit star is weak and puny compared to the chaos element, but now it receives the nourishment that my life force had been denied until this moment. In time, the two will become equals. At that point, I will attempt another change that will bring my life forces and my mana cores together like they are supposed to be. "What about the Warg aspect?" Bitra asked. "That's my personal stroke of genius, child," the Sun Eater replied. "Never forget that our endeavor is different from Quilla Erna's." Chapter 4284 Other Half Part 2. We are not attempting to undo the fall of our monster halves and guide them toward the right path. We want them fallen just like our black cores, so that once they fuse, for the first time in Magus history, two wrongs will make a right. The Warg's curse is their ability to change, multiply, and share. I won't suppress any of that. I will nurture those abilities and bring them under my heel. "Watch and learn," Tezca said. The emerald tendrils connecting the stars and the black hole to the spirit star became thicker and brighter by the second, while the Warg comet now orbited around the emerald dwarf like a moon. The proximity allowed the spirit star to share part of the nourishment it received from the rest of the quasar with the Warg aspect, so that the two became stronger and bigger in unison. Yet at the same time, those same emerald tendrils put the Warg comet in contact with the other elemental stars. As Tezca regained his strength and the new shape of his life force stabilized, each elemental star gained its own moon. The black hole came last. The fragment of the Warg aspect was the smallest of all and had to give the chaos energy a wide orbit, but it was there nonetheless. The Warg comet was now split into 7 moons, allowing the monster side to absorb all 7 elemental energies at the same time. The Warg moons exchanged the power they received from their respective elemental stars, relieving each other's burden and growing like a single entity despite the distance that separated them. "As I said, don't try to remove the curse that comes with your fallen state," Tezca explained. "Turn it into a blessing by making the curse work not as Magur intended, but as you do." The spirit tail resumed its growth once more. It was still atrophied compared to the other 9 and didn't reach 1/10 of their length. Yet instead of stopping after a few centimeters, it had doubled its original size. Soon, the Sun Eater said as the silvery star of the light element grew faster than the others in a silent promise to match their size. Soon. Space. Verhin Mansion at the same time. Solus instinctively knew the moment when the tower stopped growing, yet she waited until the next day to share the good news with everyone. Right now, the tower is just like an awakened core after a breakthrough, exhausted and in dire need of rest, she thought. I'll give it a good night's rest to recover and stabilize its condition. Solus was thrilled at the idea of showing the changes in her artifact, half in the new floors to the members of her family, but she had to wait a bit longer. The Ernas and the Verhins had breakfast together, and there was no way to rush things without even Lucky understanding that something was off with her. Solus' knees trembled under the table the whole time, and in her impatience, she didn't even savor her waffles. Only after Orion and Gianni left to conduct their training schedule for the day could Solus finally sigh in relief. "It's done, guys. The tower is ready to receive guests again," she said in one breath. "I know," Lith grunted. "You didn't stop talking about it via our link for 1 minute." "Yeah, you have to work on your poker face, Solus," Camilla said. "You were fidgeting so much that I was wondering whether you were holding in a big news or just a really loud fart." "Kami," Solus blushed in embarrassment. A look around the table revealed that the rest of the family shared Camilla's opinion. "Mama Solo fat," Elijah pointed her tiny finger at Solus. "Kami, I swear on my tower, if you just taught Ely to associate the forbidden word with me, I will never forgive you." Solus went pale in horror and shame. "Not fat, Ely." Valoran noticed the tension at the table and chimed in. Actually, the grown-ups weren't tense. They were just repressing their laughter so hard that they quivered from the effort. "Fart." Valoran produced a squeaky noise as he passed gas, associating the word with the action. "Oh," Elijah nodded in understanding. "Fat." "She's still pointing her finger at me," Solus hiccuped. "That's just because Ely has trouble pronouncing the R," Lith tried to console her. "What were you saying, Solus?" "That the tower is done rebuilding itself for now, and that I couldn't wait to show it to you. After this nice gift, however, I don't care about it anymore. See you later." "Don't be like that, sweetie," Menadian said. "It's always like that with young children. At least you can explain the situation to Ely with the dragon scales. I wish I were so lucky back when you were her age." "Why?" Solus wiped her tears and blew her nose. "What did I do?" "You weren't as precocious as Ely, of course, but you were a fast learner," Menadian replied. "And how is that a problem?" Solus asked. "Imagine this. Your young daughter has a passion for ducks, has learned their name, but has trouble spelling the U." "Oh gods," Solus burst out laughing, and so did the rest of her family. "Are you serious?" "Sadly, yes." Menadian had a sad smile at the memory. "I still remember you pointing your tiny hand around and calling everyone a duck. You had us kicked out of many establishments." Every parent in the room knew they shouldn't have laughed at the misfortunes of a fellow victim of baby babble, but they couldn't help themselves. The laughter's volume intensified. The worst part, however, was when you asked Thrain for a pet duck. Menadian sighed before making her best baby Solus impression. "Daddy duck, duck, daddy duck." She had no speech impediment, of course, but her audience had enough imagination to paint a hilarious picture of the spiteful gazes addressed at the poor Thrain and his desperate efforts to explain himself. "Gods, I don't remember the last time I laughed so much." Roz wiped the tears of hilarity, gasping for air. "I put you through a lot, Mom," Solus chuckled. "Since I'm not innocent either, I forgive you, Ely, but don't use that word on me anymore, okay?" A brief touch of dragon scales ensured that the baby girl understood the issue. Elijah said. "I forgive you, Kami, this time." Solus paused to let her words sink in. "Do something like this again, and I'll accidentally leave you behind whenever we warp around." "How many times do I have to say I'm sorry?" Camilla asked. "One would have been enough, but you didn't." A snap of Solus' fingers brought everyone in the mansion's keep right before the tower. The top of the building was still in ruins due to the missing floors, but it had reached a height of 50 meters, 164, and that was just the part above the ground. Half of the tower was hidden below, for a total of at least 100 meters, 330. Its walls were pristine white with golden veins that ran along the tower's entire length. The two colors didn't look like someone had spilled buckets of paint anymore. Chapter 4285 Lodestar, Part 1. The golden veins formed elegant, neat patterns that gave the impression that an artisan had embossed gold decorations on the white marble. It was hard to believe that the inlays were part of the solid stone, and that Menadian had achieved such a result just by assembling them. At a more careful look, one could notice that among the natural golden veins there were strings of golden runes whose arrangement fitted in so well that it was nigh impossible to distinguish them. Menadian had embossed several enchantments with actual gold, suppressing the mana they released and making them invisible to all mystical senses. There were still a few patches of gray stone, but they were small and far in between. They impacted the curb appeal, but not so much that the tower could be considered ugly anymore. It had become a majestic building worthy of a king or a powerful mage that just needed a few finishing touches. This is so cool. Your tower looks amazing, Auntie. Erin's reaction took the words out of everyone's mind and made Solus sigh in relief. She would never admit it, but she was still scarred from the vivid similes the young boy had used to express how unsightly the tower had become after its previous breakthrough. Thank you, Erin, Solus said. Inside is even better. We'll start our tour from the bottom of the tower like usual. A snap of her fingers brought everyone to a circular room. There was no tool or piece of furniture inside. Its only noteworthy features were the countless runes that covered every centimeter of the floor, walls, and ceiling. Even more peculiar was the fact that the runes were arranged in groups of 7, each of a different color, and every group formed a magic circle. Is it me, or does this remind you of the Rizar's ritual to get in contact with Maugur's will inside the fringe as well? Quilla asked. Mom, this time you can do the honors. Solus stepped aside and pushed Menadian forward. It's not you, Quilla. You have guessed the purpose of this room and where I took inspiration from it. Everyone, welcome to the Lodestar. She waved at their surroundings, and the magical runes lit up with prismatic light. Actually, I called it the thinking room, but Effie says that I have a terrible naming sense. Menadian thought. Because you do, Mom, Solus replied. Also, our tower is now called Starforge. Lodestar is a much better fitting and sounding name than your bland thinking room. I couldn't agree more, Lith inwardly nodded. This room has only one purpose, Solus chimed in, to store and accumulate enough world energy to recreate the effects that we experienced when we visited a fringe. Are you saying that the secret of Rifa's success as a Forgemaster was her ability to ask Maugur for an audience whenever she wanted? Freya was flabbergasted. How stupid do you think I am? Of course not, Menadian scoffed. Lakra brought me to a fringe whenever we were close to finishing one of our projects, and there was something off with them, or the final result was far below our expectations, even though the theory behind it was solid. We used the fringe to try out our spells or perform test runs of our enchantments to check if there were parts Maugur sneered at. Then, we altered them until we got close to the solution enough that Maugur suggested the perfect runes. It makes sense, and it sounds like a great strategy. Lith rubbed his chin. Yet it doesn't explain where the sequence of runes on the walls comes from or why you never attempted an audience with Maugur. Lakra showed them to me at the end of a long day of experiments, Menadian replied. She is the one who knew how to access the fringe. I just tagged along. Lakra told me that once she offered her help to a tribe of Filgja werepeople. They were desperate to get rid of their beast half, so they welcomed her among them and shared their ritual with her. Useless to say, it ended up in a colossal failure, and Lakra almost died for it. Even worse, the Filgjas had no intention of letting her get out of the fringe alive, even if she succeeded. They exploited her weakened state from the failed audience to attempt to kill her. Sounds like something even my tribe would do, Nalrun nodded. Allowing a human inside the fringe is rare, but sharing our sacred rituals with them is unthinkable. No clan of werepeople would let a human who knows how to commune with Maugur go. Lady Silverwing was too trusting and naive. Those are her exact same words, Menadian replied. Don't worry, she learned her lesson, and during our short trips to the fringe, we always kept our distance from the locals. The rune sequences you see here prevent Maugur from focusing too much on you. They don't shield your mind during an audience with her. They keep Maugur's mind out. This could be a great help for our research on stable mirror runes. Lith nodded. Maybe we could finally find those we lack to conjure mirror arrays. Can you give us a demonstration of the Lodestar's capabilities, Solus? No, I'm sorry, she shrugged. The Lodestar takes quite a while to charge up, and when it does, most of the other floors of the tower are powered down. On top of that, you can't use the lodestone indefinitely. With the tower's current state, the fringe-like effect lasts for about 1 hour. Then you need to charge it again. Shouldn't the tower be almost fully repaired? Alina asked. Is the remaining damage so heavy, or is the lodestone not as good as a fringe? Both, Menadian replied. The damage affects the tower as a whole, and I limited the lodestone by design. I did it to avoid Maugur from dragging me to the mindscape and giving me a piece of her mind that might result in my death. It's more like a safety measure, she shrugged. Also, I didn't want to get too used to the Lodestar. If you use Maugur's help too much, your inspiration dries up. A mage's creativity is like a muscle. If you don't exercise it, you lose it. This is particularly true for young and ambitious Forgemasters. Menadian stared at Solus for a moment before her mind wandered off to her old apprentices, like Kalga and Baitra. I was afraid that prolonged access to the Lodestar would smother the talent of my students instead of nurturing it. If I have to be honest, I was also afraid of what they might discover if they practiced forbidden magic behind my back. Avoiding Mager's focus also meant cloaking my students from her scrutiny. As I devised it, the lodestar doesn't discriminate between normal and forbidden magic, only between right and wrong runes. It was a wise move, Riffa. Lith patted her shoulder. Something like the lodestar should be a last resort, not your to-go answer for everything. As Falul taught us, if you don't rack your brain before asking for help, you'll end up narrowing your horizons and become unable to overcome your own limits. Chapter 4286 Lodestar, Part 2. Since you are talking about me, know that I resent this. The Hydra appeared out of thin air. You should have called me. I deserve to be part of the opening tour of the new floors of the tower, and so does my mother. Tell them, sweetie. Fearwell arrived a split second later. Sorry for the intrusion, but Fanny listened to everything through her mind link with Freya. We are both offended for being left out of this. I know, and I'm sorry, but I wanted this to be a family tour. Solus bowed to the Hydras in apology. If I called Falul, I also would have to call Malishka, Dawn, Loka, Zorith. And it would have been a crowd, not a family event, Falul sighed. Sorry for the outburst. I'll take my leave then. Please stay. Lith raised his hand to stop her. This is just like when you taught us domination. There is no point in keeping you out if you'll learn everything from Freya anyway. Don't mind if I do, Falul nodded. I agree with everything Lith said, Riffa. You made the lodestar into a perfect learning tool rather than a substitute for a mage's brain. Thanks, Menadian nodded. For your information, I didn't invite people like Fearwell to the opening because she already knows how the new floors work. She used them in her time as my apprentice. Mom, Falul glared at her mother. She's right, Fearwell shrugged. I never talked to you about the missing floors of the tower for the same reason Riffa doesn't. There is no reason to make you drool for something that you couldn't see or use anyway. Sadly, it makes sense, Falul replied. How long does charging the lodestar take? About 1 hour, Menadian said. A 1-for-1 rate, the Hydra was flabbergasted. Yeah, and during both hours, the tower is barely operational, Menadian nodded. Last resort, remember? Also, it made it impossible for one of my apprentices to use the lodestar behind my back. Anyone inside the tower knew whenever the floor was being used because everything else suddenly stopped working. Any shady business was immediately reported to me, and several mad mages were stopped before they could abuse the lodestar. I hate it when someone else is right, Falul grumbled. There's nothing else here. Let's move on to the upper floors, Solus said, taking point. The crystal mines and the crucible hadn't changed much. The 2 floors had gotten bigger, and their efficiency had improved, but turning silver into adamant and red crystals into violet would still take years. Davros and white crystals would take even longer. The same had happened to all the underground floors, with the exception of the cannon vault. It could still store only 7 spells, but now it took the single units less time to recharge. The floor improved the most after the breakthrough was the factory, which could now craft anything that Lith and Solus had a blueprint for, and required the power of a single violet cord awakened. The second new underground floor was located above the workshop, but beneath the forge. A fair warning, Solus sighed heavily. You are going to hate this floor's guts, Lith. Is it fluorescent pink? He asked, receiving a shake of the head in reply. You lost me, Solus. Unless this thing is about cheesy romance stories, I don't see why I should hate it. Remember your words, because I will. Solus opened the door, revealing dozens of display cabinets lined up against the walls of the room. It reminded everyone of the armory, but instead of real artifacts, the cases stored wooden props shaped after the enchanted items that Lith and Solus had ever examined or crafted. The ceiling, instead, was covered by what looked like an orrery that filled the room with golden light. Wait a second, those are runes, not stars, Lith pointed out. We have discovered some of them, and a few are my personal creation. Correct, Menadian replied. Those are all the runes you and Solus have ever learned or discovered, and this is the runescape. Lith didn't know what the name meant, but he felt his guts twisting in a knot. Here, the tower sifts through the runes to find those most suited for the craft at hand, and can also find the runes most attuned with a client in need of a blade weapon, Solus said, and she could have sworn to hear him curse. The runescape is connected to the ears of Menadian. Together, they can try all possible combinations and configurations of runes before starting the runesmithing preparatory phase. If none of those currently available work but come close enough, the runescape can even perform limited research by itself. It alters and combines the runes in its database to find new ones that might be a perfect match. Solus paused for a bit, until Lith's rage subsided before dealing the final blow. Once it has completed its task, the runescape can also perform the runesmithing phase, saving us the time and effort needed to check and move the rune patterns according to our client's mana flow when they weave spells with true magic and body casting. Lith signaled for a timeout and warped far away from the tower before displaying his mastery of Tyrus universal language in the form of a long streak of swear words. "Wow," Falul said while everyone waited for Lith's return. "If only you had your breakthrough a few days earlier, we would have skipped all that long, boring procedure to find the perfect rune sequences for Gungnir." "Yeah," Solus sighed. "We could have also tried to find the runes on our own and then confronted our results with the runescapes. It would have allowed us to put our abilities to the test and check where there is still space for improvement." "I have no idea what you two are talking about, but I understand why Lith is angry," Raz said. "My boy can rarely catch a break." "I'm back." Lith had his usual cool and level voice again. "What's next?" "The first of the 2 new upper floors. Follow me," Menadian said. They walked past the dream house, AN, the living quarters on the ground floor, and the library. "The next room is nothing fancy, but it will be of great help to you in the future," she said as she opened the door. "I called this the fusion reactor, and for once, Solus had no problem with it, so she and Lith are keeping the name." A huge metal vase-shaped contraption stood in the middle of the room and took up most of the space. Its head and base were connected to the ceiling and floor through several thick metal cables that disappeared in the golden-veined white marble. Its surface was studded with white crystals of different sizes, but it was clear it wasn't by design. The incomplete state of the tower also affected the fusion reactor, preventing it from reaching full power. Inside the metal case was a large crystal tank of the same shape, visible through a circular opening in the middle. "That's the biggest mana crystal I've ever seen," Falul whistled in approval. "Except it's not a mana crystal," Firwul shook her head. "Solus." Chapter 4287, The Veil, Part 1. "Your mother is right, Falul," Solus replied. "The metal plating and the crystal case are both hollow and serve the same purpose, to accumulate and store large amounts of world energy indefinitely, allowing the tower to operate at full power when there is no mana geyser available. It's one of the last floors to be recovered because it was the first to be destroyed," Menadian sighed. "After my demise, the tower consumed every drop of energy in the fusion reactor, and then the reactor itself before cannibalizing the rest of its enchantments to keep Solus alive. This entire floor serves no purpose once it's depleted, so the tower core cut it off as the first withered branch in the hope of prolonging its existence, while Solus looked for one of our friends to take my place." "Why call it fusion reactor, though?" Lith rushed to change the topic before the kids started asking questions about Menadian's death. "This place stores energy, it doesn't produce it." "Because the world energy accumulated here becomes immune to all kinds of elemental sealing arrays, and the tower can circulate the power of the elements just like true mages do with fusion magic," Rifa replied. "With this beauty by your side, you can instantly tower warp the moment you find a mana geyser, enjoy the protection of the tower's arrays and defensive systems, shoot all kinds of spells even while under the effects of Frost Soul, or use the watchtower to scout your surroundings." "What about the prime engine or the cannon vault?" Lith asked. "They drain too much energy to be used with just the fusion reactor backing them." Menadian shook her head. "You just have the time for a single blade swing with the engine or one shot of the cannon vault. Most of the energy would be consumed to keep the tower and Solus safe from the aftershock. Conjuring a Silverwing's annihilation is not as easy as it seems. It puts a great strain on the tower that is usually neutralized by safety measures that also require a lot of world energy. Without a mana geyser to fuel them, the shockwaves produced by an anti-guardian spell would be enough to compromise the tower's structural integrity. On the bright side, the fusion reactor also works as an energy reserve for me," Solus said. "As long as it has a bit of charge left, I'm no different from a regular person. You don't have to worry about me anymore." "That's bullshit." Lith knew that Solus was lying the moment she mentioned world energy instead of mana and life force. "I believe the part about the fusion reactor allowing you to use invigoration without any burden on me. I can also believe you can now rely on the reactor to spend more time away from me, but not that something on par with the bleed can exist. If it were true, Rifa would have built multiple reactors and no bleed." "Sadly, you are correct," Menadian replied through the black chains. The fusion reactor is meant to fuel an artifact, not a living being. It can support the tower and everything it does except healing Solus. To do that, the tower still needs a source of life force and mana. You. This is great news, Solus. Quilla brimmed with joy. This might be the most important floor of all. How long does it take to fill the fusion reactor with world energy, and how much world energy does it contain already? While powering all the other floors, it will take a long time, maybe weeks. Solus scratched her head in embarrassment from her earlier lie. Also, as you can see, the reactor is currently empty. Like no world energy at all? Freya asked. No duh, genius. I told you the tower has just finished rebuilding itself. Solus snorted. Tista only gave half-hearted congratulations, having a hard time believing her friend's words. When something seems to be too good to be true, it usually is, she thought. If Rifa could build something so powerful, then why create the bleed in the first place? I bet that Solus wants to use the reactor as a cover for the bleed. She is still bent on protecting Rifa's reputation, but doesn't want anyone else to risk their life for her as I did. Still, Quilla is right, Lith said. Give the fusion reactor priority over everything else. We've already given the Tron Woods a lot of extra world energy, and it has made great progress. Now we'll focus on you. Reduce the world energy flow to the other floors to a minimum, with the exception of the spark. Tista's armor has a long way to go before it fits her properly. And I need divine beast-sized equipment, so I'll also keep the crucible active, Solus replied. Let's move to the last floor. Fair warning, Falul, you and Aunt Loka are going to be the ones to hate this new floor's guts. The new floor was located between the infirmary and the watchtower. The Verhins and their friends peered into the rooms as they passed, noticing that every floor had become larger. Moreover, the quality of every old and new piece of equipment had improved. Aside from that, there was no significant change. This is what once Mom called the hobby room, but I've decided to rename it the Veil. Solus opened the door, revealing a nigh-empty room. The gold-veined white marble was bare, with no decoration or runes engraved on its surface. The Veil had no magical aura, nor could anyone detect a trace of the powerful enchantments that the room was supposed to have. Elena would have asked what the point of wasting so much space for a broom closet was, if not for one out-of-place detail. A small pillar of stone emerged from the middle of the floor and another from the ceiling, with a diamond-shaped white crystal floating vertically between them. The tapered tips of the gemstone were a hair's breadth from the pillars, exchanging energy with them in what resembled a corona discharge. The process emitted no sound and produced no flash of light. If not for the emptiness of the room, one would have easily missed it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the reason I could afford to have so many guests and apprentices without the constant fear of someone, even guardians, stealing my secrets, Menadian said. The hobby room, I mean, the Veil is the most powerful and complex cloaking system that I could devise. From now on, everything that happens inside the tower or any artifact within its premises is shielded from examination. Dragon eyes, breathing techniques, life vision, you name it, it doesn't work anymore. Lith, Solus, and anyone of their choosing can practice magic, and their spells will be cloaked as well. That's why Solus said that Silverwing would hate this room's guts. Tista's eyes widened in understanding. If the Veil had been here just a few days ago, she could have taken part in the Forgemastering process since trust wouldn't have been an issue anymore. Except she is wrong, Menadian shrugged. I've known Lakra much longer than Solus, and my memories of her are still intact. I can assure you she won't get angry. Quite the contrary, she'll be relieved. Chapter 4288 The Veil, Part 2. Thanks to the Veil, Solus can afford to share with Lakra and show her much more than before. Even though Solus doesn't trust Lakra much right now, she trusts my work. I really hope you are right, Mom, Solus said. Aunt Loka caring more about improving our relationship than pursuing her own agenda would be great news. Wait a second, Morok raised his hand to speak. Does this mean that from now on we can also ask Master Adjutor for help? Correct, Menadian nodded. His dragon eyes are no longer an issue. He's now a welcome guest as much as Lakra. I also have a question. Rena raised her hand as well. Why did you call it the hobby room, Rifa? It's an underwhelming name and says nothing about this place. It was actually very accurate. Menadian conjured a hologram of the appearance of the floor at the time when she was the master of the tower. There were magical holographic puzzles, gaming tables, a liquor cabinet, and comfortable armchairs where one could smoke without the smell of their pipe or cigar stench the air. All things that one would have expected to find in a noble household, not in a mighty mage tower. A place to spend the long and boring winter months while betting a bit of money with friends and guests to make things more interesting. The cloaking effect is strong enough to shroud even the minds of those under its effects. So many bloodline abilities don't work as well. That, and the fact that I rarely had to come here, made me repurpose it into a small gambling den where my guests wouldn't be afraid of any form of cheating. Also, it gave my disciples the opportunity to bond, vent their frustration with me, and solve their grudges without doing something stupid or resorting to violence. This is where we settled scores. Be it a high-stakes bet or a contest of magical prowess, one could give their all and hold nothing back. That's actually a very smart idea, Tista pondered. A vampire's mesmerize or a banshee's charm would make everyone suspect they might cheat, but here those abilities wouldn't work. Would the veil also work on, let's say, the gaze of Bytra? Lith asked. She has already replicated 3 of the 5 pieces of the Menadian set. I expect her to complete the set sooner rather than later. Yes, if the day ever comes when Bytra makes her own version of the eyes, the veil will protect us. Solus shivered at the idea. Even better, from now on, whenever we use the prime engine or are in the tower's proximity, our combat spells can't be read either. If we fight another dragon, we won't have to be afraid that they copy our spells and use them against us on the fly. The veil will also support us in combat against anything that might recognize the tower's true nature by either bloodline abilities or powerful detecting arrays. That's nice, but it has a weak point, Firwell pointed out. No matter how good the veil is, with enough time and talent, any cloaking device can be cracked. It's not an issue in the middle of a fight, but if you invite the wrong person here or an enemy discovers the tower's location, they might be able to do it. I know, Menadian sighed. There is no perfect cloaking system, but I figured out a solution to that as well. She walked up to the pristine gemstone and put her hands on either side. One rune of power emerged from each of the hundreds of facets of the crystal, but no one could read them aside from Lith and Solus. To anyone else, the mystical letters were a bunch of blurred lines and blots of light. This crystal is a direct interface with the veil. It allows me to add or remove cloaking runes, altering the enchantment of this floor anytime I want, Menadian said. Back in my day, I came up with a dozen different cloaking arrays and used them in rotation. Never in the same order or with a precise schedule, of course. Also, I changed them as soon as I came up with something better. With Lith's paranoia, I'm afraid this might be his hobby room as well, and he might spend his free time inventing new cloaking runes. Everyone chuckled at the joke. Everyone but Camilla and Solus. They knew how close to home Menadian had gotten. We could make it a hobby room as well if only we had hobbies, Lith pondered. I hate gambling even more than I hate spending money. We'll find something to do with this place, Solus shrugged. In the meantime, this could be a nice place for the kids. A wave of his hand conjured several chairs, tables, and tabletop games. They were all holographic and with 3D constructs instead of physical pieces. The rules were enforced by the Tower Core, helping small children like Fenrir learn the different games. Also, biting or swallowing the small pieces would pose no danger to their health. Thanks, son, Roz patted Lith's shoulder. After witnessing your forge-mastery of Fallow's weapon and visiting the new floors of the tower, I have gained a newfound respect for magic. Before I started practicing it myself, I only had a vague idea of how much effort you put into everything you did. Now, I believe I understand magic and you better. I have realized the monumental task that waits for me if I decide to awaken. Lith nodded, glad to have followed Fallow's advice about not stopping his family's reckless training. The failures and hardships they had endured hadn't made the Verhins stronger, but had made them wiser. Magic was no longer a miracle that would deliver their every wish as long as they put enough time and effort into it. It was a demanding work that could bear the sweetest fruits, but also nothing. The Verhins had yet to make up their minds about awakening, but now it would be a well-thought-out decision instead of a knee-jerk reaction to the kidnapping attempt. Unless there is something you want to see or do in here, we'd better go back home, Lith said. I don't want Gianni to ask herself more questions than she already does, and I want the fusion reactor to charge as quickly as possible. I'm going to turn off the lights of the tower if it means speeding up the process by even a single second. Space. Giera Continent, region of Menka, inside the Black Throne at the same time. Jorl met his ally 2 mana geysers away from T-Lekit. It was a trip long enough to make sure that no one was following him, but short enough that the cursed tower could cover in a single warp steps. If Orpal were to become suspicious of the Storm Griffin's movements and call him, Jorl would be able to return to T-Lekit so fast that the dead king would have believed Joral's lie about never straying far from the fortress city. The Storm Griffin didn't trust the Black Throne much, but trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. Orpal's plans progressed faster than Joral wanted, and without the Cursed Tower, he would never escape whatever fate the dead king had in store for him. Chapter 4289 Malignant Parasite, Part 1. The Storm Griffin and the Cursed Tower didn't use mind links, let alone talk. Joral sat in the middle of a diagnostic magic circle as he circulated his upper blood throughout his body, and then suppressed it again. The Storm Griffin studied not only the changes in his life force, but also those in his mind. Joral felt something gnawing at his flesh and whispering in his ear whenever he transformed into an upper. It was a silent, slow battle in the background of the melody of his life force, but a battle to the death nonetheless. The Black Throne helped Joral in his endeavor, using all the skills and spells he had created over the millennia to understand his new pet project's condition, and if possible, reverse its effects. "I'm ready when you are," the Cursed Tower said as he recalled the mystical energy of his enchantments and put it to better use. Joral nodded in acknowledgement and went on with his experiments for a while longer. He wanted to come to his own conclusions before talking with the Thone. "He's much older and more knowledgeable than I am. I don't want to be swayed by his opinion and observe my findings through the lens of his theory. I'm my own griffin, and the Black Throne is no friend of mine. The last thing I need is to become dependent on him. If I want to avoid just switching one master for another, I must keep my mind sharp and use the Black Throne like I use Orpal. I'll learn everything I can from them and get rid of them both the moment there's nothing more I can take." "I'm done as well." Joral reverted to his human form and gave one last look at his life sculpture. The artifact resembled a black pool ball and recorded every detail of his life force. Joral had used the life sculpture before accepting the first drop of Orpal's blood to study the changes it would induce in him and undo them if necessary. "You first, please." "You were right, my disciple." The Cursed Throne's lights flickered in what the Storm Griffin had learned to recognize as a nod. "Your upper condition is no blessing. It's a treacherous sickness that spreads when you least expect it. Every time you transform, the Verdalac blood inside your body alters your life force and tries to make the change permanent. The little bastard is not trying to face your griffin nature head-on like a man, but to slowly push it out like a coward. You are a hybrid as your dead king promised, but he lied to you when he said that your condition was stable. Given time, the Verdalac blood will swallow your griffin side if you are not careful. Your condition is similar to that of a thrall. Your Verdalac side is the blood core, and your griffin side is your mana core. The blood core's goal is to replace the mana core and turn you into a specific undead, no matter your race of origin. The only difference is that, while a thrall's blood core disappears unless it's constantly replenished, your Verdalac side is a self-sufficient malignant parasite. The disgusting critter prolongs its existence, even without receiving more of Orpal's blood by feeding off your life force. I believe this is a lingering vestige of the vampire blood that Night fused with Orpal's divine beast side to create the Verdalac. The fool didn't even bother considering that the Red Mother made her children a dead-end evolutionary branch on purpose. Whatever a Verdalac is, it will never be anything like Verhin. That said, what would happen to you if your Verdalac side took over is beyond me at the moment. You may become a Verdalac like Orpal, or a new species of Verdalac that carries all the bloodline abilities of a griffin, or just a few of them. It's worse than that. Joral extended a tendril of spirit magic, and the Black Throne accepted it, establishing a mind link. The transformation has a similar effect on my mind as well. Thoughts and feelings that are not my own worm their way into my subconscious whenever I call upon my upper powers. I would think it's a side effect of the alterations that the Verdalac blood tries to inflict on my life force if I didn't know better. Those are Orpal's thoughts and feelings. I've heard him rambling about all kinds of topics enough times to know how he thinks and how he sees the world. I believe you are right about me becoming a Verdalac, but it wouldn't be in any way that benefits me. Best case scenario, once the upper side swallows my original life force, my personality would be twisted into something that can understand and relate with Orpal. I would be his loyal ally and trustworthy friend. Worst case scenario, I'd become his slave. I would care about the same things as him and share his same goals. I'd end up forgetting what I wanted to achieve in the first place and focus on what he wants instead. The only silver lining in that nightmare would be that if I became like him, I'd never sacrifice my life for him. I'd be an egotistical coward who puts himself above everything else. Unless, of course, that newfound affinity brings you to accept one of the dead king's prisms and become one of his chosen, the Black Throne pointed out. I'm afraid you are right, Jorl pondered. I would trust Orpal enough to buy his bullshit, and the hunger for power that would plague my mind would make me easy to manipulate. Once I take the prism, I will become nothing more than spare parts for him. A meat suit to wear and put his crazy plans into action without him having to set foot on the battlefield and risk his life. There is one more silver lining to this situation, the Cursed Tower said. Once you warn your allies and those you want to make your allies of the threat the upper blood poses, you'll gain their trust. Also, you'll give them a very powerful motivation to betray Orpal and join your cause. None of those you brought here struck me as an altruistic fool. The moment they realize they have been tricked into drinking poison, they'll do anything to ensure their own survival. Indeed, but I'd rather let them stew for a while. Jorl's eyes narrowed. It will give them the time to become full uppers, and the more they trust the dead king, the more outraged they will be from his deception. I need them to be desperate and angry enough to accept me as their savior, and put their lives in my hands without asking too many questions. That's why I chose you, apprentice. The Black Throne laughed with his rasping, creaking voice. You know what you want and how to get it. Your talent does match your ambition, and you never overreach out of stupid pride. Thanks, Jorl said, not letting those sweet words of praise let him forget that he was nothing but a plaything to the cursed object. I also need your help with another matter. Chapter 42, 90 Malignant Parasite, Part 2. Ask and I will provide according to my possibilities, the Black Throne replied. Within reason, of course. I have put together several squads of good mages, Jorl said. They are the best fighters I could find among the upper ranks, and they have great tactical minds. Yet they are not the first I trained, and many of their predecessors died too easily for my taste. I've reviewed the footage of all the fights the upper army had, and I've come to the conclusion that we have a problem even bigger than Orpal's influence on us. Most of the uppers are plant folk who were the size of a human or slightly larger. Many Fae and plant folk easily reached 3 meters, 67, or height, and a few of them could even surpass the 10 meters, 33. But the smallest divine beast would always be about 20 meters, 66, tall upon reaching the blue. Compared to that, the biggest Fae looked like a scrawny child. Even if my soldiers come from powerful awakened families, their equipment becomes completely useless the moment they assume their upper form. They grow in size and power, but that comes at the cost of their weapons and best means of protection. Lesser divine beasts suffer from this problem as well. Learning the secret of the violet makes them stronger and bigger, but what's the point of that if you can't make use of your new reach because you have to maintain your old size? Those who have yet to take part in the war, like Irian, could go back to their families and ask for new equipment, but no one would ever give away so many resources without an excellent reason. Revealing their allegiance to the dead king would only earn a lesser divine beast a free set of adamant chains, and to be brought before the council to be judged. Get to the point, the Black Throne snarled. As I said, I need your help, Jorl replied. Recruiting uppers loyal to me is a waste of time if they end up dying like flies on the battlefield. I need magical metals and crystals, and lots of them at that. It's the only way to give those loyal to my cause the means to survive and make them indebted to me. Consider it an investment. We'll strengthen our side bit by bit with a proper cover story, and when the moment to face Orpal comes, our soldiers will be armed to the teeth, whereas the dead king's goons will still be wearing rags. Many birds with one stone. More like many birds with a mountain of adamant. My adamant, the Cursed Tower scoffed. Save your silver tongue for someone who can fall for it, my apprentice. I haven't missed how you tried to entice me by calling the uppers loyal to you, our soldiers. I have no soldiers and never will. I am the only army I'll ever need, and no amount of flattery will convince me otherwise. The awkward pause that followed gave Jorl the time to curse his own hubris, and wonder whether it was Orpal's blood that had led him to try such a foolish approach, or if he was getting too used to hanging out with idiots. Still, your idea has merit, and I appreciate that you have such a high consideration of my means. I don't possess that much adamant, my apprentice. I'm bound to my tower, and there is no such thing as an enchantment that allows you to sow magical resources or grow them like potatoes. The only way I had to replenish my adamant reserves throughout the millennia was through willing pseudo-hosts like you. I helped them, and they gave me what I wanted once they became rebel leaders, council representatives, or kings. And what did you do with all that stuff? Jorl asked. I used it as magical knowledge advanced to alter the enchantments of my tower and try to undo my wretched state. The Black Throne sighed. Even Omni pockets have limits, and I possess too many priceless pieces that I can't leave lying around. Can you help me or not? The Storm Griffin crossed his arms. I can help you. The grating voice of the cursed tower put emphasis on the last word. I have all the adamant you'll need to craft your equipment once you reach the Bright Violet, apprentice, but I won't waste a single chunk of ore for your pawns. You are my apprentice and deserve my assistance. I'll support your plans, but you are the one who has to put them into practice. If I have to do everything myself, I'd rather kill you on the spot and get rid of the middleman. Are we clear? Yes, Jorl felt the aura of the Black Throne pressing on him, and found himself covered in a cold sweat. Good boy, the way the cursed object spoke and laughed made the Storm Griffin tense up like a bowstring. As a reward, I'll point you in the right direction. I know of several deposits of adamant that should hold more than enough to enact your plan. Should, Jorl echoed. Also, I know of several mines as well, but I can't just get in there and take my sweet time mining the ore. I would die before my pickaxe hits the ground 10 times. Pay more attention, apprentice. I said deposits, not mines. The Black Throne replied. The places where the mined metal was stored and accumulated for rainy days, and to keep it away from those who might use it against my old apprentices. The only problem is that my information is outdated by a few millennia. I know where the adamant was back then, but I have no idea if it's still there. That's for you to find out. Can't you accompany me? Jorl asked. With your arrays and Omni Pocket, finding and collecting the ore would be a piece of cake. Besides, I need a place to store that much adamant, assuming I find it. If I suddenly have a collection of dimensional amulets, Orpal will get suspicious and expose my betrayal before I can forge-master anything. I can only keep the adamant safe for you once you collect it. The bitterness in the tone made it clear that the Black Throne wasn't just setting his disciple up for another test. Those deposits are away from mana geysers, very far away. Not all my disciples trusted me, and many of them considered me competition. They knew of my limitations and used them against me. The deposits ensured that I couldn't take from my disciples more than they were willing to give me, and that, if overthrown, their enemies would have nothing with which to equip their own armies. That way, my late disciples bought themselves the time to reorganize their forces and strike back, and also kept a bargaining chip to obtain my help during a crisis. It's a good strategy. You should learn from them. Jorl appreciated the cunning of his predecessors, but it was the Black Throne sharing it with him so cavalierly that shocked him. He wasn't lying when he told me he's helping me mostly for fun, the Storm Griffin thought. Chapter 4291 Hidden Pieces, Part 1. The Black Throne isn't just teaching me how to reach my full potential, he's also turning me into a worthy opponent, Jorl thought. This cursed bastard wants me to be so strong that I can stand my ground against him, and he can enjoy our battle. To him, I'm nothing but a puzzle, something that must be complex enough to be challenging, but without the means to harm its master. A game that only needs time and wits to be solved before moving on to the next. Don't worry, Throne, I will, Jorl nodded. Is that all the help you can offer me, though? Coordinates and wishful thinking? Of course not, the cursed tower scoffed. If you find enough adamant and the necessary natural treasures, I'll forge-master the equipment for your followers just like I'll forge-master yours. If you allow me, apprentice, the choice is yours. On the one hand, the Storm Griffin was aware that the Black Throne might rig the equipment and add failsafes that would prevent its user from turning against the cursed tower. On the other hand, Jorl deeply regretted having already wasted so many resources on his current equipment. He had spent over 1,000 years accumulating what he would need for the equipment suitable for the size of a violet-cored griffin, and Orpal's forgemasters had consumed it all. The quality of the artifacts produced by a legendary mage in his mage tower was bound to be incomparable to what a bunch of forgemasters desperate enough to join the dead king's cause could achieve. Despite his many misgivings about their alliance, the Black Throne represented Jorl's best shot at overthrowing Orpal and taking command of his upper army. I will worry about how to get rid of the Black Throne once our interests no longer align, he thought. Until we defeat and capture Orpal, we are on the same side. What about blade weapons? Jorl actually asked. Can you forge-master them for me and the future generals of my faction? Of course, the cursed tower burst into mocking laughter. Not, power cores weren't a thing back in my day, or I wouldn't have needed forbidden magic to craft a mage tower, my silly apprentice. Power cores are a recent invention, and blade spells are their rarest application. Only a handful of people have gotten their hands on a blade weapon through the centuries, and even fewer among those who witnessed a blade spell survived to tell the tale. I've seen only one mage capable of casting blade spell my entire existence, and only because I knew exactly where to find the first king. Valoran Griffin, the Storm Griffin asked in amazement, did you try to approach him? No, he was too terrifying. The Black Throne shuddered at the memory, yet his usually mocking tone was replaced by respect whenever he mentioned Valoran's title. His hate for forbidden magic was well known. The first king would have never accepted my gifts. Maybe I could have defeated him if I put my life on the line, but Tyrus was never far from him. If she so much as caught my scent, I wouldn't be here now. You're not sure you could have one? Jorel asked in amazement. Was my mother's human husband that strong? Much more than you can imagine, the cursed tower sighed. If not for Valoran's peaceful nature and his love for his people, he could have conquered the entirety of Garland and Verendi. All the land on this side of the ocean would have been his realm. Such an empire wouldn't have lasted a day after his death, and the people of the current kingdom would have never experienced 1,000 years of peace and prosperity. But that's something only historians praise. You are lucky Valoran the First is gone, apprentice, or the world map would be much different today, and I would still be hiding. I'll take your word on that, Jorel nodded. And your offer for equipment. There's a strong chance that Orpal sabotaged what I'm wearing, and I can use a spare in case he tries to backstab me. Do you need to size me up? Don't be foolish, apprentice. The Black Throne's voice sounded like the creaking of an old chair. I already know everything about you, and my offer was a mere display of courtesy. I forge-mastered your equipment soon after our first encounter. Space. Griffin Kingdom, Lustria County, Verhan Mansion, later that day. Say what you want, but there's something weird going on here. Orion trimmed the beard that his civilian status allowed him to grow. First, Lith becomes able to craft blade weapons with ease, and now Solus has become a divine beast as well. Such a sudden improvement in his forge-mastering skill is already strange, but Solus awakening her bloodline a few days after they crafted Falul's Gungnir is suspicious. It's too convenient to be a coincidence. The two events might be correlated. No, Gianni shook her head. The two events are correlated, how, however, is beyond me. If you're so sure of it, then why haven't you gone full constable on Solus and Lith? He asked. Because we are their guests and poking our noses around would be beyond rude, Gianni sighed. Besides, we need their help, not the other way around. If they kick us out of the mansion, we'll be the ones in trouble. That's true, Orion pondered. Lith has already helped the girls and us a lot. Asking more of him would be ungrateful. And stupid, Gianni paced around the room slowly. I'm not annoyed by his secrets. I'm annoyed because as long as he keeps me in the dark, I can't plan around them to deal with the Jernoff once and for all. I have many powerful cards ready, but our enemy is an entire awakened bloodline that dates back to Valoran the First himself. We need. Mom, Dad, Freya said through the door after knocking. Do you have a minute? I need to talk to you. Come in, pumpkin, Orion replied, and the door opened. Why do you always knock? You know our door is always open for you, don't you? Yes, Dad, but I also know that Mom likes her privacy when she plots something. Freya cleared her throat in embarrassment. Also, I'm afraid of what I might see if I enter your bedroom unannounced while its hush enchantment is active. That's considerate of you. Orion straightened his already perfectly pressed clothes. He and his wife did more than plot in their room. What's this about, dear? Gianni studied Freya for a second, noticing how tense she was. Did you share something inappropriate with Falul again, or do you have more questions about your pregnancy? Mom, Freya became beet red. My harbinger issues are my own, and I'm a healer. During my time at the White Griffin, I've learned everything I need to know about my current condition. Thank you very much. Then spit it out, Gianni replied. I beg your pardon. Whatever this is about, it makes you uncomfortable. Gianni pointed at Freya, wringing her hands and fidgeting with her feet. If it's not a personal matter, just spit it out and get it off your chest. Don't agonize over it. Chapter 4292 Hidden Pieces, Part 2. One moment. Freya closed the door and made sure that the hush enchantment of the Erna's apartments was at full power. It's not a personal matter, but it's very sensitive, and I'm afraid of how you might react. Please don't be mad at me. I never meant to deceive you or keep this a secret from you for so long. She gave her parents a deep bow, her voice cracking. After what happened to Floria and the Jernoff coming after you, you already had too much on your plate. I didn't want you to. It's okay, child. Gianni stopped Freya before she burst into tears. I'm not angry with you, and I promise I won't hurt you as long as you tell me who you are and where my real daughter is." The person who looked like Freya froze at those words, while Orion's eyes flared up with mana to activate life vision. He needed but a glance to notice that even though the life force of the person in front of him was a perfect replica of his daughter's, down to the Hydra's blood running through her veins, their energy signatures were different. "How did you know?" The Freya thing's voice became cold, and its eyes reabsorbed the tears. "I have copied your daughter's appearance down to the smallest details. There should be no way of telling us apart without using mystical means of detection." The creature straightened up, its expression mildly annoyed at being exposed so quickly. "Don't test my patience, child." Gianni opened her hand, and Skywarp appeared in her palm with a threatening screech. "Where is my daughter, and what did you do to her? I won't ask a third time." Orion was already holding Grimlock in a two-handed grip, and casting his best spells as fast as he could. "Calm down, Mom." The door opened again, and this time the real Freya stood behind it, along with several overly attractive people that the Ernas had never met before. "I'm fine, and these people are our allies. They are here to help us." A quick look with life vision confirmed Freya's identity, yet Gianni didn't lower her guard until Skywarp blinked Freya to her side, and Orion's Forgemastering spells confirmed she wasn't wearing a slave item of any sort. "You called them allies," Gianni echoed. "Interesting choice of words. They are not friends you trust, only people who have a common goal with us." "Seriously, Mom, how did you spot Protheus? I instructed him about what to say and how to act. He's such a quick learner that after the third rehearsal it was like looking in a mirror," Freya asked. Orion moved his eyes from his real daughter to the doppelganger, and he found no difference between them. The way the light reflected on the elemental streaks in their hair, the shape of their noses and chins, everything was identical, as if Freya had found her lost twin. "Never heard of someone named Protheus," Gianni pondered. "To answer your question, he looks like you, but he doesn't behave like you. Maybe it's because of your troubled relationship with your biological mother, Drenya, but when you have to give us big news, you do more than tense up. You act ashamed because even after all this time, you are still afraid of disappointing us. Moreover, ever since you discovered that you were pregnant, you move your left hand over your womb whenever you get nervous. Your friend Protheus did neither thing. He acted like you do when you speak with your friends, not your parents." "Interesting," the doppelganger nodded. "I've learned a lot from you, thank you, Lady Ernas." "I've answered your question, child. Now stop fidgeting and answer mine." Gianni looked at the real Freya. "Who are these people, and why did you attempt to deceive us?" After everything, Freya realized she was about to repeat Protheus' words and stopped herself. "Do you promise to listen to me until the end before getting angry?" "I promise I'll try." Orion nodded, refusing to put Grimlock away. "You have my word." Gianni had Skywarp disassemble into a full set of multi-purpose adamant needles and sat down. "Mom, Dad, this is Uffel, the seven-headed dragon." Freya pointed at a handsome man over 19 meters tall who gave the Ernas a deep bow. The name alone was enough for Orion to tighten his grip on the blade until his knuckles popped, and Grimlock growled in anger. "Uffel, the fucker who carried my little flower around after the Mad Queen turned her into the Dragon Knight. The bastard who led my baby girl to her death." His voice was a whisper, but his killing intent raged like a storm. "You are correct on all accounts, Lord Ernas." Uffel got down on one knee, offering his neck. "Yet that's only a fraction of my crimes." Orion put the blade back into its scabbard, not trusting himself with a sharp object, but refusing to do anything until he understood what was happening. His trust for Freya dwarfed his hatred for Thrud's former general. "As you know, the Hydra clan, my clan, granted Uffel mercy and took him in," Freya said. "Everyone knows that." Gianni threaded her fingers. "He's the only surviving member of the Mad Queen's accursed army." "That's what everybody believes, but it's incorrect." Protheus shapeshifted into his human form, taking the appearance of a handsome young man with silver eyes and emerald hair. "I'm Protheus Griffin, son of Thrud and Jormung, brother of Valorin II, father of all doppelgangers, and a divine beast of her army born from Arthan's madness." He revealed his true form for a second, a translucent gelatinous humanoid with no distinctive features but his eyes. "I'm Lyri the Stormborn." A gorgeous blonde woman stepped forward and kneeled beside Uffel. "I'm Ophius the Quetzalcoatl," a muscular man taller than the door's frame said. One after the other, the 9 surviving generals of Thrud's army introduced themselves. Orion was too shocked to utter a single word, but Gianni's calculative mind had already solved the puzzle, and was working to find the best way to add those new pieces to the chessboard. Uphil wasn't the only one to survive the Golden Griffin's destruction, Freya explained after the divine beasts had all come forward. Ligon spared all those who belonged to a new bloodline and might help the lesser offspring of the Guardians to overcome their current limitations. Uphil and the others have helped the Hydras in their endeavor with the Harmonizer and have offered to help us as Weregild for what happened to Floria. They are all divine beasts and have reached the bright violet. With one exception, Protheus released a bright cyan aura. I'm the youngest of our family, and despite my perfect body, my mana core needs time to develop properly. 9 divine beasts, Gianni thought out loud, 8 of which are dead to the world and with abilities no one bothers to remember. That's why I brought them to you. Freya looked at Orion first and then at her mother. They can now be your wild card. With their bright violet cores and mass, even once the surprise effect is gone, they can hit the Jernoffs hard. They have all been trained by Thrud herself and possess powerful equipment that. Chapter 4293 Fully Awake, Part 1. You don't have to convince me, sweetie. Gianni cut her daughter's pitch short. You did the right thing by not bringing them here sooner, and I thank you for your thoughtfulness. We needed time to grieve your sister and these creatures to turn into useful weapons. Nobody missed the implications of her words, but no one said anything either. My only question is, why did you have Protheus come to us while pretending to be you? What were you trying to achieve? I wanted to show you how good he is before you had the opportunity to kick us out in a fit of rage. Freya blushed a bit, bringing her left hand to her womb. I also hoped that seeing his shape-shifting skills in action might give you a few ideas, Mom. That's a wonderful thought, Pumpkin, but useless. Orion sat down as well, trying to keep the edge off his voice. Doppelgangers were so effective during the War of the Griffin because normal humans couldn't distinguish them from the people they impersonated. The Jernoff, however, are all awakened and cautious sons of a dog. They won't ever attack someone just because they look like your mother. Having one or more body doubles is an old trick the Jernoffs will expect, and they can expose Protheus just like I did. I know he can't take Mom's place, Freya replied. Yet with his ability, he can hide in plain sight and shadow Mom around. He can protect her. He can do so much more than that. They all can. Gianni waved at the 9 divine beasts, gesturing for them to stand up. Yet there are too few of them, and once the Jernoffs discover that Thrud's generals are still alive, they won't be more than a deterrent like Lith or Tista. The Jernoffs have time, numbers, and resources on their side. They will dig up the information about our new allies from the records of the War of the Griffins, and find a way to get rid of them long enough to get the job done. We have only one chance to end this conflict on our terms. If we fail, we won't have another. She looked around the room, weighing her options, and how much she could rely on the same monsters who had led her little flower to her death. Are you willing to stake everything on this one chance? Gianni walked up to Protheus. Do you realize that if something goes wrong, the entire Magur will come after you to study and replicate your abilities? I know plenty of mages who will make you wish for death if they get their hands on you. I do, and I'm not afraid of that, the doppelganger nodded. We are not friends. You owe me nothing, Gianni continued. Why should I believe that when the time comes you won't hesitate to risk your millennia-long life for a mere human woman you barely know? We owe you a lot, Ophius replied. We have a heavy debt of blood with the entire Griffin Kingdom. Falul has shown us the consequences of our foolish actions and how many lives have been destroyed because of us. Thrud orchestrated the events that led to Floria's death, but we carried them out. You are just collateral damage. We can't bring your daughter back from the grave, but we can at least take responsibility for the impossible situation we have put you in. It sounds nice, but words are just words, Orion sneered. Give me one good reason I should entrust my wife's life to a bunch of cowards who have fought their whole lives knowing that death wouldn't stick thanks to the Golden Griffin. I can give you one excellent reason. My brother Valorin II, Protheus replied. When he grows up and reads about the War of the Griffins, I want to be able to look him in the eye when I tell him that I'm not the person described in history books anymore. I want to become an older brother that Valorin can be proud of and look up to. Yet just saying sorry will prove nothing. Only by deed can I forswear the crimes I perpetrated in Thrud's name. I don't expect your forgiveness, or that by saving your wife I can erase one of my past mistakes, Lord Ernaz. I just want to do something I don't have to be ashamed of, something that the old Protheus would have never done. If I have to risk my freedom for that, so be it. I'd rather live the rest of my life in chains than disappoint Valorin more than I already did. Protheus speaks for us all, Leary said. The blood that runs in Valoran's veins will bring him misery and hardships. Everyone will hate him for what his mother and we did. He will be forced to lie and hide his real name, forever ashamed of his heritage. We want to ease his burden, even if just by a little bit. We want Valoran to see more than the blood on our hands when he looks at us. Please, let us help you. If not for us, do it for that innocent baby. Give me one chance, and I swear on my liege that I'll follow your orders, no matter how crazy they might seem, until your life is safe, and the Jernoffs are no longer a threat, she said, dropping to one knee again. We swear. The other 8 divine beasts followed suit like one. I accept your oath, Genie nodded. Yet I don't trust you. I'll share with you only the parts of my plan you need to perform, and only minutes before we take action. I can't afford leaks, doubts, or hesitation, she said, and the divine beasts nodded for her to continue. Before I assign you a role, however, I need to know everything you can do. Explain your bloodline abilities, skills, and weaknesses to me and leave out nothing. Space. Verhan Mansion, a few days later. How much longer before the fusion reactor is full? Lith asked. A few hours, Solus replied. That thing charges slowly, and every time we use the firing range to practice our blade spells, the tower needs most of the world energy it can absorb to neutralize them. Still, it was worth it. Lith appreciated Ragnarok's smooth mana flow and perfect balance with a few practice swings. After Grandma reforged our weapons according to our new forge-mastering technique, we couldn't afford a caravan of desert merchants spotted us and tattled about it to the rest of the world. We only have one chance to surprise our enemies with our newfound prowess. After that, all it takes is one witness, and we can kiss our advantage goodbye. How do you feel, little buddy? The angry blade used latches and seals to form words, yet it stuttered. I feel weird. Things are much clearer now. I learn faster and understand your world better, Master. It's like I've always been half asleep, and now I'm fully awake. Big bro too whiny, the sage staff snorted. We feel great, we smarter now, we better, Mom, just like me promised, me good kid, right? Yes, little one, you are great. Solus patted the staff's head, obtaining a high-pitched squeal in reply. Chapter 4294, Fully Awake, Part 2. Ragnarok wanted to stay and contemplate the changes in its life a little longer, but the sage staff warped them both to the nursery to show their new abilities to the kids. The staff uses many more words than before and is learning new ones faster than Elijah, Solus said, after confirming she and Lith were alone. It's only a matter of weeks before it speaks as well as Ragnarok. Which begs the question, should we be worried about the development of our weapons' semi-consciousness and the increase in the emotional range they are experiencing? I don't think so, Lith replied. I've come to terms with the fact that my weapon has a personality of its own a long while ago. It can be unsettling from time to time, but he never showed any sign of resentment or desire for independence. Ragnarok knows he was crafted for a purpose and wants to perform it to the best of his abilities. The problem is that to do that, he tries to understand the world around him, and for someone like him, the experience can be daunting. What do you mean someone like him? Solus asked. Our weapons are not truly alive, Solus, he said. They see everything in black and white according to their mission parameters. For example, for Ragnarok, any threat to the children is bad, those who help us to protect them are good, and everyone and everything else is irrelevant. He's akin to a big dog trained for defense. Ragnarok has no concept of murder, motive, or proportional response to a threat. As long as he fulfills his mission and gets praised for it, he is happy. Or rather, that's how he behaved in the beginning. Like the staff is behaving now. Lith pointed at the surveillance mirror showing the artifact jumping around the nursery on the heel of its haft like a kid playing hopscotch. Over time, he's learned that not everything is black and white, which confuses him. To make matters worse, every time we upgraded his body or enchantments, Ragnarok's processing and learning speed increased. Yet, while before he wasn't smart enough to notice the changes or accepted them without much thought, now he does notice and tries to make sense of them. You've seen it back when we discussed the reforging of our weapons. He displayed self-preservation instinct. He was willing to be destroyed in order to fulfill the mission, but he wondered if it was necessary. Just like the staff, Solus swallowed hard. Do you think she's acting this way already because of the Yggdrasil wood and power core? Ragnarok's original body was just adamant, and he started with only a few pseudo-cores. That's surely one of the factors, Lith nodded. Better materials and enchantments seem to increase the intelligence of a semi-conscious artifact, but that's not just it. As I said, Ragnarok was created with a purpose, protecting Floria. It narrowed his perspective and limited the number of things he took an interest in. He never called me Dad. He knew he was something I possessed, and our relationship was clear. I'm not so sure the staff has a mission, though. What is this, Mom? The sage staff opened a mind link with Solus as the babies rummaged through her closet. Why so many clothes if no wear them? They had gotten bored of being stuck in the nursery, and were now exploring Solus' room with the help of the two artifacts. By my mom, I think you are right, she replied. I wasn't thinking about anything in particular when we forge-mastered the staff. I just wanted to create the best piece I could. Mom, the staff warped back to Solus, carrying many dresses and a few bathing suits on its head. Why nowhere? A person only needs one set of clothes at a time, dear. Solus collected everything, folded the clothes, and put them back in their place. As for these things, you only wear them on the beach. She blushed a little while putting away the one-piece swimsuits, and a few bikinis Lith had never seen before. What is beach? The staff asked. A place full of sand, Solus sighed. Enough with the questions for today, please. Get the others out of my room and find something else to do. She patted the head of the artifact, which warped away and helped the kids check the contents of Solus' drawers. Gods, what have I done? The staff behaves like a child and thinks I'm her mother, Solus whined. What will happen when she grows up? Will she resent me for creating her, for lying to her? Look at the bright side, Lith shrugged. You'll never have to give her the talk, and the worst the staff can do if she hits a rebellious phase is put black eyeliner on the Balor eyes and decorate her haft with thorns. Are you serious? Solus went pale at the idea of carrying around such a tool, and having to argue with it every time she needed to activate an enchantment. Don't order me around. You are not my real mother. I'll activate the barrier when I say so. I'm an adult now, the staff said in Solus' daydream, getting her killed. Not at all, Lith replied with a laugh. You should see your face. This is not funny, smartass, Solus snorted. You worry too much, he chuckled. First, the staff is not a living being. She won't experience as many feelings and instincts as you fear. Second, you two are bonded. You don't need long emotional speeches to understand each other. One touch is enough. The staff will live most of her life through you. Everything that makes you happy will make her happy. I know because that's how my relationship with Ragnarok works. And your relationship with me? Solus inwardly sighed. I hope you are right, she actually said. Enough worrying about the future for today. Stress is giving me a major headache, and there's only one cure for it. A snap of her fingers brought Solus and Lith to the nursery, where Camilla was reading a story to the children after dragging them out from under Solus' bed. Camilla used light magic to conjure holograms of the main characters of the story and the other elements for special effects. Are you done with work for today? She asked, closing the book around her finger to mark the page. Valoran and Elijah complained about the interruption, while Raldorak giggled and cooed. He liked hearing his mother make all those silly sounds, but liked receiving his parents' attentions much more. Yes, Solus replied, scooping the 3 babies from the Doomslayer crib. How are my cuties? Did you miss me? Yeah, Elijah and Valoran used words and nods to convey their happiness, while Raldorak made more baby noises that Solus had to decipher with dragon scales. Congratulations, Kami. According to Ral, you are a great storyteller, Solus said. So much so that he's a bit sad he can't follow your story as well as his siblings. Let me get this straight. Camilla had heard nothing of the compliments. Do your dragon scales work just as well as Lith's? She pointed at the silver-veined golden scales that now covered Solus' arms. Chapter 40, 295 Family Duty, Part 1. Oh, Solus froze a bit under Lith's scowl. They had agreed on Solus using her newfound ability in secret, not to exacerbate the feelings of isolation that Camilla developed after losing her powers at the end of a pregnancy. I mean, yes, Solus said. That's great, Camilla said with a sweet voice and a warm smile that didn't extend to her eyes. Another person who can connect with my children better than I do, just peachy. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you, Kami. Solus gave her a deep bow. Don't apologize. Camilla pinched her nose in frustration. You have simply done what I did every day of my pregnancy and still would if I still had my powers. Gods, how long will it take for me to stop being a grumpy jerk? That depends on you, Lith shrugged. You know that I have a solution for that. What do you? She turned to him, recognizing the pensive gaze and dour expression that put together formed his perverted face. In the months right after the birth of a child, Lith and Camilla were usually too tired to engage in any recreational activities. Even when they did have the energy, neither of them wanted to get far away from Raldorak for long. You sure do, Camilla said with a laugh. Too bad that I don't want another trial period with your powers so soon. I'd say we have our hands full with this little imp already. Don't call Ral like that. He's a sweetie, Solus said, lifting the baby boy in her arms. Mama. See, Solus hugged him tight. He always knows the right thing to say. Constable, Valoran tried to show off his new word of the day. Bay, Elijah followed suit, releasing a purple bolt of choke magic. Me goo too, Mom. The baby girl looked around, noticing that while Valoran clapped at her and Raldorak looked at her in admiration, her parents either frowned or covered their faces with their hands. Me goo, Elijah wasn't so cert to be a good girl anymore. Dad, Mom. Yes, baby girl, you're the best. Lith took her in his arms. Good job for not shooting that thing at anyone, that would be bad. Ya, Elijah nodded. Me no ba. What rune was that now? Solus sighed. Basic, it's the magic word for choke magic. Lith said after asking Elijah to repeat the mystical rune's sound via a mind link. Space. Nobody liked the news about Elijah discovering the magic word for the fourth stable cursed element, but they all pretended to be happy and showered her in compliments. The members of her family wanted Elijah to grow up while in control of her gifts, not to live in constant fear of them. As soon as the lodestar charges up, I'm going to use it to research Basic and the other stable cursed runes, Lith said during lunch. I need to understand how they work in order to teach Ral and Ely how to control them. So soon? Tista asked. I mean, the reactor just finished charging a while ago. Shouldn't you let the spark and the other floors work at full power for a bit? If it keeps up like this, the production of magical materials will be as good as halted. Even worse, the awakening process of the Tron Woods will be indefinitely postponed. We don't plan on using the lodestar often, Tista, Solus replied. We'll split those 2 hours between Lith, Malishka, and Elijah. We'll do our best in that time and then compare notes once the pseudo-fringe dissipates. With a bit of luck, a single session will give us enough material to work for days. If it doesn't, we'll at least have assessed the abilities and limitations of the new floor. We have yet to use the lodestar once, Tista. If we don't practice with it enough, we'll never learn how to use it properly when we need it the most. Speaking of awakening, Elena cleared her voice, making Tista inwardly curse at herself for bringing up the topic. I've thought long and hard about it. Seeing you work on Fallel's Gungnir and witnessing Solus' breakthrough was an eye-opener for me. The last part made Tista and Lith sigh in relief. Elena had heard plenty of stories about how painful an Awaken's breakthroughs were, but no matter how well a story was told, it couldn't compare with seeing it firsthand. I know it's going to be hard, but I want to awaken. Lith's hopes dropped like a falcon with a stroke. I want to be able to defend myself and my children. Elena couldn't forgive herself for freezing in fear when the Awakened had attacked Zekel's home. Their killing intent had scared Elena to the point that she hadn't even noticed when one of the Awakened had taken Surin away from her. No matter how hard she tried to remember that day, one moment the baby girl was in her arms, and the next she was gone. I promise you that I'll work hard and follow your instructions by the letter. Elena clenched her cutlery as hard as she wished she had clung to Surin. I'll be patient and won't overwork myself anymore. You have my word. Mom, Tista tried to object, but Elena raised her hand for silence. I know what you're going to say, sweetie, she said. I don't have to awaken. I know that you and your brother are capable of keeping us safe, yet I want to do it. Even though I might never amount to much as a mage, I can't give up without first giving it my all. If someone else ever comes after our family, I don't want to regret the moment I choose to do nothing but hope for the best. No matter how little my contribution to our safety might be, I don't want to be a burden for you. I feel the same, Roz nodded without stopping to eat. I'm aware I won't become strong overnight and that learning magic will take time and discipline. As Mother said, I'm just making the decision I won't regret. My fields will still be there when I stop training. I can still go out for a beer with my friend at the end of the day. What I can't do is keep living while pretending there's nothing more I can do to protect my family. Maybe it'll turn out that I have no talent for magic and I'll quit in a few weeks, but I have to try. There is no shame in giving up after doing your best and realizing your limits. Hiding behind your weakness and using it as an excuse to shy away from your duty, however, is the coward's way. I may be weak and a fool, son, but your father is no coward. Roz put down the cutlery and looked Lith in the eyes. I know, Dad, Lith replied. What about you too? I want to awaken as well, Renas said, but not to be a warrior. I have my children to look after and they are my priority. I want to study magic just enough to endure the first breakthroughs. I have no interest in developing my core past a certain point. Chapter 40, 296 Family do /tie, Part 2. Once the triplets start going to school and Lyria leaves for the academy, maybe I'll become more serious about magic. Until then, however, I'll be content with being able to heal everyone and not freeze in panic the moment an awakened releases their aura. Running toward my little brother and sister is a much better option, and I trust you to protect me. Renaa left out one of the reasons she wanted to awaken, because it embarrassed her. If I don't awaken, sooner or later I will look older than Mom, and people will take me for her mother, if not even grandmother. That's one blow my pride could never recover from. Don't worry, big sis, Aaron puffed his chest out with pride. You can always count on me. Thanks, Aaron. Senton didn't point out the misunderstanding to protect the boy's self-image as a protector. As for me, I'm with Renaa. My father and I have poured our sweat and tears into the Proudhammer works, and we have many employees who depend on us to provide for their families. If I quit now in the pursuit of magic, the business would take a hit, and Dad would have to come out of retirement until he finds and trains my replacement. I have a duty towards my family, but I also have a duty towards my father and employees. Besides, not everyone has to be a warrior. By making the Proudhammer works thrive, I'm creating a business that my children can inherit and making Lucia a better place for them. I'll fight my own way, like a blacksmith and a merchant. Well said, son, Zekel laughed without even bothering to hide how happy he was at the news. I toast to that. Hear, hear, Lith raised his glass, soon followed by the rest of the family. Not so fast, Falco jumped from his seat. Yeah, what about us? Tyrion asked, turning towards Lennart. Why don't you ask us what we want to do? He mumbled, asking the question because he was expected to, not because he cared. Because I already know the answer, Lith tutted. Besides, you don't know the first thing about magic and are too young to start even basic training. If you want to awaken, do like your oldest sister and uncle and achieve it on your own. Aaron was as proud of being called an uncle as Lyria was annoyed. Everyone had to call her the oldest, or Tyrion would act as if they were talking about her, claiming to be the oldest among the triplets. But Uncle Lith, this way will be the only non-awakened in the family, Tyrion objected. Yeah, even Dad is awakening, Falco pointed out. What do you mean, even Dad? Renaa interjected, closing the circle instead of Lennart. Respect toward your father, Falco Proudhammer, or my slipper will give your buttocks the awakening of a lifetime. The triplets whined and apologized, hiding behind Zekel for good measure. She had never hit the triplets their whole life, but they knew that whenever she used their full names, they were in trouble. When she grabbed the slipper, like at that moment, they were in great trouble. The triplets had no desire to discover what happened when they crossed that line. No awakening for you, and that's final. Lith shook his head. When you become 5 or reach the yellow core, I'll teach you magic as I've done for Aaron and Lyria. The rest is up to you. Falco, Lennart, and Tyrion sighed in relief at those words, but only because Renaa put down the slipper. That said, I haven't forgotten about my other promise, Lith continued. You are almost 4, and after what happened, you deserve to bond with a magical beast early. As soon as we're done with lunch, I'll introduce you to the 4 clans of the Trawn Woods. Yes, Tyrion cheered. Finally, Falco clenched his fists in triumph. Victory, Fenrir said, drawing all eyes on her. What? I'm older than them. If the triplets get a magical beast, I get one too, right? Oh gods! Celia raked her hair at the thought of another mouth to feed, more fur to clean around the house, and more damage to her furniture. Right, Pumpkin, Protector nodded. You are a big girl now. Yay, Fenrir raised her arms and plate. Seconds, please, I'm still hungry. Oh gods! Celia closed her eyes and joined her hands in prayer as her youngest child ate almost as much as an adult. Dad, why does Mom become devout during the meals? Lilia asked in confusion. Yeah, Uncle Ligon is right there. She can talk to him any time, Laren said. I'll explain it to you when you are older, Ryman sighed. He knew his wife's pain all too well, but couldn't let Fenrir be the only one left out of the group of children. Between his work and the reward for discovering the threat of the Black Throne, Protector had put aside quite a nest egg, but feeding 5 emperor beasts and 2 magical beasts cost a lot of money. Adding another would make the clock tick even faster. The triplets wolfed down their food like fasteros, eager to meet their potential steeds. Fenrir ate so much that Celia feared the day when her family wouldn't be guests of the Verhins anymore. Alina noticed her friend's distress, but pretended not to. She remembered how being afraid of not having enough money to feed her children felt, and nothing she could say could help the huntress in her predicament. "Now that I think about it, how is your appetite, Solus?" she asked. "I beg your pardon?" Solus almost choked on her third serving of dessert. "You've become a divine beast, yet I noticed you eat the same amount of food as before." Elena stood up to caress Solus' head. "You don't have to go hungry or hide in your tower to eat to your heart's content. We are your family, and you should never be ashamed to be yourself in front of us." "Thanks, Mom." Solus became beet red and cleaned her mouth in embarrassment. Weirdly enough, she spoke while staring at Menadian like a puppy afraid of being scolded. The first ruler of the flames raised an eyebrow and granted her daughter's silent plea. Menadian knew that ever since Solus had become a divine beast, her appetite had barely increased. The tower side, which was now part of her life force, fed upon world energy and raw materials that the human and divine beast aspects converted into nutrients. Just like before her breakthrough, Solus ate mostly out of gluttony. She used her newfound divine beast status as a cover to avoid being the target of more jokes, and Alina's words made her feel guilty for deceiving her family and making them worry. After lunch, Lith brought everyone to the fringes of the Tron woods with the mansion, and called the leaders of the 5 tribes of magical beasts. Rise, Shifes, Gylads, and Bikes were the original rulers of the woods, but after Urdu's fall, a flock of Krons had moved to Tron, slowly expanding their area of influence. Bikes and Krons competed to produce an emperor beast and claim the title of the missing 4th king of the woods for years. Chapter 4297, The Nest, Part 1. The tribes of the woods considered becoming a member of the Verhin family a great honor and the next best thing to earning the title of king. The magical beasts introduced the most promising young members of their respective clans to the kids. The magical beasts' role wasn't just to be their playmates, but also their magical mentors and protectors. To the surprise of no one, Tyrion followed her sister's example and chose a rye. Falco picked a black-furred Shife, and Lennart the biggest bike he could find. Only Fenrir needed several minutes to make up her mind. "Not the bike, please, gods, I beseech you. Don't let my daughter pick the bike, I can't afford it," Celia prayed from the bottom of her heart. "A Gyled would be the perfect fit for my family. Grass is free and grows everywhere. May Fenrir pick the Gyled." "Venison," Fenrir said, proving there was a mystical connection between mother and daughter. "I want venison." Alas, the reception was bad, and at those words the Gyleds turned tail and ran away, disappearing in the Tron woods in the blink of an eye. "Dear," Celia yelled in desperation. "She means dear, she's just a child, and sometimes she mixes up words." "Aren't deer and venison the same thing?" Fenrir asked in confusion. "Once they are in your mouth, yes," a rye with a flaming, thick fur said with a laugh. "Otherwise, no, little one, deer is the living creature, venison is the meat on your plate." "Then I got it right, Mommy, I want venison," the little girl said, licking her lips and making everyone else shudder. "You've just eaten, baby girl," Celia sighed. "Also, Gyleds are our friends." "I was going to keep it for later," Fenrir tilted her head, "and it looked yummy." Celia groaned, inwardly thanking the gods for the dear magical beast's prompt escape. "At least that poor Gyled missed my daughter confessing that making friends is as important as choosing the cut of meat she wants for dinner to her," she inwardly cried. Left with only the representatives of 4 tribes, Fenrir moved from one magical beast to another, sniffing and patting them in turns. "Screw the tribe's honor. If she says one word about roasted chicken, I'm out of here," one of the Krons attending the selection thought. "I want the bird, Dad," Fenrir said, her little tail wagging in excitement. "You want Mr. Bird for what, pumpkin?" Protector asked. At least her mouth is not watering. Maybe she's not thinking of food, he also thought. "Right, I want Mr. Bird," the little girl nodded, recognizing that she had been rude. "As my friend." "That's nice of you," Protector sighed in relief, and with him the rest of the adults. "Yet Mr. Bird is not a toy. We need to ask him if he also wants to be your friend." The Kron looked at Fenrir like he would at the hungry ball of fur, claws, and deadly fangs that she hid under her cute human appearance. He couldn't help but feel that he was one late meal away from becoming spit roast. "Those 2 lived long enough to become emperor beasts, and I've never heard about any of our kind disappearing near the Fastero household. I'm just paranoid." The Kron glanced at Slash and Crash. "We can give it a try," he said, nervously shifting his weight from one foot to another. "Yay," Fenrir took the maybe for a yes and rejoiced for it. "Mr. Bird and I are best friends now." "Not so fast, baby girl." Celia stepped between the two before Fenrir could hug the Kron and start bonding with him. Mommy has the last word in this kind of thing. Since when, everyone thought. Celia walked around the almost 2 meters, 67, tall Kron, literally measuring and weighing him. On the plus side, feathers are easy to collect and I can use them to stuff things, she thought. Also, under all that fluff, a bird is quite skinny and light. He shouldn't eat too much. He has no claws or fangs to sharpen on my furniture, which is nice. On the other hand, the talons at this bastard's feet are not retractable, and when he's inside the house, he'll waddle awkwardly and be in everyone's way. Last but not least, where is he supposed to sleep or sit? He can't curl up in Fenrir's bed. I can see many punctured mattresses and torn sheets in my future. I don't know, dear, Celia turned to Ryman. Flying is not safe for someone as young as Fenrir, and we can't demand this poor creature to stay away from his natural element until our baby girl grows up. Why is flying unsafe, Mommy? Fenrir unfurled 2 cute, flaming red wings from her back and flew before Celia's face. I think it's funny. Since when, oh, right? Protector and her other kids used their wings so rarely that Celia had almost forgotten about them. Remind me, dear, how come we didn't have problems with Lilia and Laren flying away when they were little? Because we kept them locked in the house, Ryman replied. We let them go play outside only once Nalrun joined our family. By the time we moved back to Lucia, the kids had become responsible enough not to need construct cages around the house. Right, Celia sighed. Welcome to the family, Bash. Please, take good care of my daughter and don't hesitate to snitch on her to me when she misbehaves. Mom, Fenrir snarled in outrage. He's my best friend, not yours. Bash, the Kron tilted his head in confusion. What kind of name is that? Welcome to the matching set, brother. I'm Crash and she's Slash. A large feline patted the Kron's wide back. And if you're anything like us, your future Emperor Beast form will be named something along the lines of Stop Pooping on My Floor. An equally large canine said. Slash, Crash, and Bash, it has a nice ring to it, Falco pondered. Yeah, too bad Auntie Celia beat us to it, Turian nodded. Too bad it's also accurate, Celia sighed. Are you sure you'll be okay, Renaa? I'll manage, thank you, Celia, Renaa replied. If I tell her that between the money we earn and Lith's self-repair arrays, we won't have any problems providing for 3 magical beasts, Celia will have a stroke from envy, she actually thought. Meanwhile, the failed applicants left the mansion's premises after congratulating the chosen member of their clan. Don't worry too much, Celia, Lith said. I knew something like this might have happened, and I prepared a few things in advance. Here, you can have them. She handed her what looked like a circular quilted blanket, large enough to accommodate a magical beast and an elliptical rough stone. The portable nest self-repairs and cleans. Bash can use it to sit around the house and sleep on Fenrir's bed without destroying it with his talons, Lith explained. The stone, instead, is for sharpening his beak. And keeping my furniture safe, you're a lifesaver. Celia jumped to his neck, kissing him on both cheeks. Thank you so much. I feel much more relaxed now. Here, Bash, this is for you. Don't go anywhere in the house without it. Chapter 4298, The Nest, Part 2. She put the portable nest on the Kron's head to ensure he wouldn't lose it. Is this how she usually treats you? He snarled. Am I supposed to put up with this level of disrespect on a daily basis? You wish, Crash scoffed. This is her giving you the benefit of the doubt. Wait until you're not on probation anymore and you'll see the real Celia. Maybe I worried about the wrong female, Bash pondered. The mother sounds much more annoying than the daughter. Fenrir was clinging to his neck, gently patting his head and peppering it with kisses. Can we try your nest, Mr. Bird? Pretty please, she asked after feeling how soft and comfortable the quilt was to the touch. Sure, he nodded, placing it on the ground below him. And call me Bash, no need for honorifics. It's over, I called myself Bash. Now I'm going to carry this stupid name for the rest of my life. He inwardly sighed. Thanks, Bash. Fenrir snuggled under the Kron's huge feathers like a chick seeking its parents' warmth. It's so. Her voice drifted away as she fell asleep on the spot. Can we get inside the nest too, Mom? The triplets asked. The Kron looked at the kids and then at their parents, hoping to be spared further humiliation. Only if you don't bother Mr. Bash and if he's okay with it. Renaa politely nodded at the magical beast. It was the equivalent of telling him that the choice was up to him, but refusing the hatchlings of the crownless king's sister wasn't something a proud warrior of the woods would ever do. No problem, he sighed. So fluffy, Falco yawned. So warm, Turian snuggled under the feathers until only her head was out. So Lennart and his siblings fell asleep like one, joining Fenrir in her soft snoring. Quiet, Rena's eyes became veiled with tears. Gods, I can't believe it's so early in the morning and yet so quiet already. Can I borrow Bash when I'm having a bad day? Celia couldn't believe her eyes or ears, but she was a practical woman. She put Salkar down near the nest, and the baby boy stepped inside after sniffing the unknown creature a bit. In less than a minute, he was asleep as well, with a peaceful expression on his face. It works, it really works, Celia's voice cracked, forcing her to hush the kids. Where have you been all my life? She hugged the flabbergasted Kron, ruffling his head and giving him plenty of meat. I'm sorry about the Bash thing, but I can't change your name or Lilia, and Laren would be offended. What a suck-up, Crash clicked his tongue. Brother, my furry behind, this guy is a traitor, Slash said in outrage. I did nothing wrong, Bash replied. Also, I'm a Kron and a warrior. Why is everyone treating me like a mother hen? Lith and the other parents were also bringing their babies to the nest, and they all fell asleep in seconds like clockwork. Well, this is nice, Lith studied the phenomenon. We found a way to make them nap without any more fuss. The poor Bash needs a bigger nest for the task, Elena said, adding more food to the Kron's bowl. Make it something that would fit the living room when we spend the evening together, sweetie. Soon, Bash had so much meat piled up before him that he was sure he would die of indigestion if he ate it all at once. Lucky bastard, Lennart Spike said. I didn't get a name, let alone a morsel of food, before the kid disappeared under your feathery bottom. I have many things to say about my name, and none of them is nice, Bash grunted. But I understand your anger, Bike. Have some meat. We are both part of the Verhin clan now. Let's forget about the grudge between our old clans and get along. What about us? Falco's Scheif and Tyrion's Rye asked. We skipped the morning hunt to come here. Help yourself, Bash shrugged. It's way too much for me anyway. I was waiting for the kids to choose their magical beasts before showing everyone the different aspects of my life force, Solus said. Yet they fell asleep before I could say anything, and I don't want to wake them up. Don't you dare, Quilla whispered angrily. Orican and Juria have never napped without putting up a fight before. There is no telling if this miracle will ever happen again, so let me enjoy it while it lasts. I was just saying that I don't want the kids to miss the show either, Solus replied. If they do, they will never let us hear the end of it. Also, Lennart can use a little bit of happiness. Rena looked at her son's peaceful expression after so many restless nights. Thanks for waiting, Solus. Thank you, Bash. The Kron felt as honored as embarrassed by Rena's deep bow. He was a born and bred warrior who was supposed to spill his blood and that of his enemies on the battlefield to earn his glory. He wasn't used to being praised just for sitting still. Protector looked at Laren, hoping that he would join the merry band as well. The young boy, too, had trouble sleeping, and Ryman hoped the Kron might help Laren with that. Unfortunately for Protector, Laren walked away to join his friends in their morning practice of magic. Space. Lith warped the portable nest and its inhabitants inside the mansion and spent a few minutes enchanting a much larger version. The kids slept until lunch, and the parents used that time to enjoy their long-forgotten hobbies. Roz whittled a couple of figurines of his family members, while Alina read the first non-magical book since the kidnapping attempt in Lucia. I guess the Verhins now have their own version of the nest, Ligon chuckled as he looked at the kids. Too bad it's completely different from yours. It's the same thing, old lizard, Salark shook her head. The purpose of my nest is to allow the people of the Blood Desert to live and sleep peacefully under our wings, just like Bash is doing. He may not be a phoenix, but he has the spirit of one. The Kron couldn't disagree more. He had just gotten to the Verhin mansion and already regretted it. He wanted nothing more than to go outside and spread his wings, yet he had to perform a task he didn't like for the sake of people he barely knew. Bash didn't complain only because honor and duty bound him. Moreover, disturbing such weak and helpless creatures on a whim felt cruel to him. Little did he know that was exactly what every phoenix in the desert did every day, hence Salark's comment. At the end of the meal, while Alina prepared tea and coffee for everyone, Solus walked up to Salark. I need a favor, Grandma. Do you mind following me in the other room? It's a bit of a private matter. Don't worry, dear, the Overlord gently patted her head. Since you acquired your divine beast form, my blood flows into your veins. Your mind is an open book to me from so close. Chapter 4299 Deep Wounds, Part 1. I know exactly what you wanted to ask me, and the answer is yes, Featherling. I'll cover up for you, trust me, everything will be all right, Salark said. I see, Jeannie thought. Solus is going to show us her divine beast forms in their full size, but she has nothing big enough to wear. She must be worried about exposing herself like it happened to Freya. From that angle, it would be the worst thing that could happen to a respectable woman, not to mention the inevitable questions of the children. Her gaze softened, and her suspiciousness subsided as Gianni moved her eyes to the slight swelling in Freya's womb. It was too small to call it a baby bump, but the idea of having more grandchildren filled her with joy as if the due date were imminent. It was also the reason she fell line, hook, and sinker for Solus' carefully worded act. Gianni was right about everything except the nature of the matter that worried Solus. She wanted to reveal her divine beast forms and needed an open space, but the sudden absence of the whole family would have raised too many questions. Magical research was a perfect cover when Solus and Lith had to disappear for a while to use the tower. Yet Gianni would never believe that a Magus and Menadian's daughter needed Roz's expertise for their experiments. Hence, Solus wanted to ask Salark to conceal any anomalies in her other forms from the eyes of those who didn't know about the tower and protect her secret. In turn, the Guardian had carefully worded her answer to reinforce Solus' deception. "Do you mind if I invite Master Falul?" Freya asked. "She's dying to see your other forms, and there's something she wants to check with you." "Of course Falul can come," Solus nodded. "She's my mentor as well and a dear friend, yet let me give you a friendly warning. If this is what I suspect, you two and I are going to have a problem." The tinge of annoyance in her voice baffled even Gianni, who, no matter how much she racked her brain, couldn't find a suitable explanation for such a reaction. "Kids, we are going out for the demonstration," Solus said. 5 more minutes. Fenrir had gone back into Bash's nest along with the others and was slowly drifting into sleep. "It's fine, I can always show you later." She turned around and walked away, stirring the triplets from their slumber. "Not a chance," they said as one, making their parents happy beyond belief. Maybe it was the drowsiness, but Lennart was in perfect sync with his siblings again. "Wait for me." Fenrir didn't want to be the only one left behind and ran after her parents. "My clan leader lied to me." Bash looked at the pile of prime ribs that Renah had dropped in his bowl. "He told me that taking care of my protege was going to be a grueling, dangerous task that would test my patience and skills. Instead, all I have to do is sit around and sleep. This is a job even a bike could do." "You are indeed a lucky bastard, brother." Miadin, Lennart's bike, licked his lips as he sniffed at the pile of meat. "Are you going to eat that?" "I was going to keep it for later. We have already eaten, twice," the Kron said in reproach, but the other newly arrived magical beast seemed to miss his point. They had never had so much food in so little time, and winter had yet to end. Being fed instead of hunting to survive was a new concept for them, and they were afraid they could lose such privilege at any moment. "Do what you want. I'll store my share." Bash put 1/4 of the ribs inside the dimensional ring that he now carried on his toe. "If Fenrir wants to play later, I can't afford to have a bloated belly, or I won't be able to keep up with her." The other 3 magical beasts whined at the idea of delaying the feast, but seeing the dimensional ring in action reminded them that they had one as well. "Thanks, brother." Miadin stored his share as well. "I take back at least half the bad things I said about your kind in the past." "I don't," Bash thought, wobbling after Fenrir. Meanwhile, out in the park, Solus cleared an area large enough to host her and Falul from the snow. "Sorry for the wait, but I expect to be as weak to the cold as Lith, and I don't have an armor to keep myself warm," she said. "Frigging cold." Falul had one, yet she jumped from one foot to another while rubbing her shoulders. "I know it's nothing you haven't seen before, so I'll start with my Indech form," Solus said. "There is still something about it that might help Freya and Quilla." Before either of the 2 women could ask her to clarify, Solus started to shapeshift. Much to everyone's surprise, the transformation started from her head. The hair below shoulder level wreathed and knotted itself into something that resembled a prismatic coral. Solus' hair shone with inner light as the tresses kept growing, and their knots shaping themselves into feathers. Once the process was over, Solus had turned into a 2 meters, 67, tall Indech with copper-red skin and a single set of pristine wings on her back. Yet there were a few differences from a normal Indech that only those who knew about Solus' secret were allowed to see. Golden and silvery veins streaked respectively the left and right sides of her body, creating delicate patterns. The enchanted metal's veins formed mystical runes that gave the Indech the appearance of a priestess, with votive tattoos painted across her skin. Also, elemental crystals replaced the pupils of her 7 eyes, giving them an ethereal glint that further reinforced the impression. If you remember, the human threads of my life force are held together by the same enchanted metals that support the tower's structure, Solus said with a mind link. I don't know whether they'll go away once I reach the bright violet or be forever part of me. Yet just like my full life force, I can't let anyone see me like this without exposing my bond with the tower. Right now, Grandma is concealing the crystal eyes and metal streaks, but in the future I'll have to hide them with body sculpting. Please act natural, because I can't allow anyone to use their breathing technique on me. I see what you mean, Quilla nodded. Your transformation started with your hair. The world energy flooded 6 of your 7 streaks, and from there it moved to the rest of your hair and then into your body. A human's streaks are the manifestation of their affinity towards an element, so it's only natural that they are the perfect medium to draw it in and store it if necessary. Correct, Solus nodded. Maybe it's because I went from a rank human to rank 3 just a few days ago, or maybe it's thanks to the resonance effect with Lith I experienced in Giera before my breakthrough. But my transformation is slow compared to the other indices of the family. Chapter 40, 300 Deep Wounds, Part 2. It happens in quick but clear steps, and I think it might help you with treating Ryla and the Ballers, Quilla. I believe you are on to something, Solus. Quilla stepped forward to examine her patient closely. Glimo said that with her 7 streaks, Freya is the closest thing to a stable, evolved Baller he had ever found, and that he wanted to study her. Assuming he was right, I can use Freya as a starting point for human evolution and your transformation to identify the necessary steps. Did you record the process already? Of course, Solus said. I have no idea if I will always shapeshift into an Indech like this, or if the phenomenon will disappear once my human aspect is not completely atrophied anymore. I've already collected all the data I could with my best diagnostic spells. She couldn't mention the eyes and the infirmary before Gianni and Orion, but Quilla understood the hidden meaning of Solus' words. Excellent idea, but no matter how good your spells are, Solus, nothing beats studying a phenomenon with your own senses. Do you mind if I take a look at your life force during and after the transformation? Quilla asked. No problem. Solus reverted into human form and waited for Quilla to activate her breathing technique, guiding light, before shapeshifting into an Indech again. Solus' life force went from a glowing galaxy shrouded in the tower core's light to a colossus comprised of countless prismatic threads. It looked similar to Lith's Indech life force, with the 7 elemental spheres in her head and the 6 atrophied mana organs across her body. The main difference between the 2 indices was the presence of the mystical metals that patched up the damaged prismatic threads in Solus' life force and carried the elemental energy flowing from a mana organ to another. The increase in the number of threads as Solus shapeshifted forced the tower to release more metal strands to keep her life force from falling apart, slowing down the transformation in the process. It gave Quilla the time to notice that the vortices of the Indech wings also generated from Solus' head and then moved to her back, where they established the connection between Solus' eyes and wings. This is interesting, Quilla said after studying the transformation a few times and taking note of every major detail she could find. Thanks, Solus. If only the Tyrant bloodline had any data on 7 streaked humans, this would give me a solid foundation. There was nothing about it in Glimo's library, Solus asked. Not a word, Morok shrugged. Only Awakened developed the 7 streaks, and those few who do are dangerous. Besides, before Lith's appearance, the Tyrants believed they already had what they needed for their work. Everything Glimo's and his predecessors did was for the sake of the Tyrant race. Helping the Ballers was just a side effect. No offense, Ryla. None taken, she sighed. You look so cool, Auntie Solus. Garrett couldn't see the anomalies in her Indech form, but to him the 7 eyes and copper-red skin were a symbol of hope. Can you do any special trick? If you are referring to swirling wind or any bloodline ability, the answer is no, she groaned. I just got this form, and I don't know the first thing about manipulating the world energy with my wings. You are still special, Auntie, Garrick said with a beaming smile. Being short suits you, you look so pretty. What? Solus managed to blush, bringing her face to a flame red. I'm not short. She would never argue with how the transformation in an Indech enhanced her curves and got rid of the excess body fat. But Solus didn't like being reminded of her height, no matter the form she was in. Yes, you are, Aaron sniggered. Auntie Ryla is way taller than you, and so is Tista. Female Indices usually reach 23 meters, 77 of height, while the males stood 25 meters, 83 tall. With her 2 meters, Solus was a head shorter than Ryla and a head and shoulders shorter than Lith's in Dech form. I guess even after shapeshifting, proportions remain the same. Lyria nodded, creating a hologram of Solus' human form in front of Tista, and another of Tista's Indech form in front of Solus. Whatever, Solus grunted in annoyance. Now take a few steps back. I'm going to shapeshift into a divine beast and I need space. The children giggled and nudged Falul. Solus could easily guess what the Hydra's intentions were and didn't like them one bit. Her body quickly grew in size, and the red color drained from her skin until she became a majestic dragon. Solus was covered in translucent white scales, each holding what looked like an elemental rune at its core. She still had 7 eyes whose pupils were made of pure crystals, but now long horns that resembled thick tree branches rested on the sides of her head. Solus had 2 sets of wings on her back, both membranous and covered by prismatic crystal feathers. More crystals came out from her spine at the base of her long neck, running along her body until the bone-spiked tip of her tail. Crystal spikes decorated her knees and elbows, creating rainbows as they refracted sunlight. Solus' dragon form reached 22 meters, 72 of height from head to toes. Her neck alone took 1/4 of her height, while the tail prolonged her body by over 5 meters, 17. Her life force had rearranged itself again, with the stars of the same element combining into bigger ones and forming a constellation that resembled the dragon. Below the elemental flames produced by the newborn stars lay a matching elemental crystal. It channeled and focused the power of the divine beast's life force, keeping the damaged stars from collapsing on themselves. At the same time, the human and tower aspects formed a solid framework that connected the stars and kept the constellation stable. On the outside, Salark covered the crystal protuberances with holograms, giving them the semblance of ice formations. Maybe it was the winter or the chilly air, but everyone felt as if they were looking up at a mountain peak covered in immaculate snow. Not bad, Solus, Falul said after shapeshifting as well and studying her former disciple's new form. The Hydra was almost as tall as the dragon, making the children giggle and irking Solus to no end. Fine, I get it, she growled, releasing a short burst of violet flames from her fanged maw. I'm a midget no matter what form I take. Are you happy now? Yes, the kids nodded in unison, and origin flames blazed across Solus's body in annoyance. Can you fly? Of course I can. She shrank to a tall human size with a snarl. But I never had wings before, so I'm clumsy at it. Since you've already had your fun picking on me, I'm done with my demonstration. Don't even think about asking me for a ride. I had enough mockery for one day. Please, Auntie Solus, Aaron said. We were just having fun. At my expense, young man, Solus grunted. Do you see me laughing? Please, as the children pestered her, and Solus made a run for it before their puppy eyes broke her will. Salark moved almost everyone inside the tower with a cloaked blink that only someone as powerful as a guardian would notice.